They say in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But that's not quite true. There are things between the wars. Things that wait in the spaces where the Emperor's light grows thin. Things that whisper in languages older than mankind, that hunger with appetites we were never meant to comprehend. I'm going to tell you about one of them. About Carth Prime. About the dead moon that hung in its sky for 10,000 years without incident. About the miners who dug too deep, and the Inquisitor who came too late. About the idol. I'm going to tell you what happened when a world learned to pray to something that should never have been awakened. When faith became an infection. When devotion became annihilation. This is not a story of heroism. There are no last stands here, no glorious sacrifices that turn the tide. This is a story about inevitability, about the moment when humanity realizes it has already lost, and all that remains is the screaming. The Imperium of Man spans 1,000,000 worlds, but it lost Carth Prime in 11 days. 11 days from first contact to complete extinction. Not to Xenos, not to heretics, to something that smiled. So turn down your lights, check that your door is locked, and whatever you do, don't look at the moon tonight. Because if it ever smiles back, it's already too late. My name is Inquisitor Castor Marwen of the Ordo Hereticus, and if you're hearing this, then I have failed. Not just failed my mission, failed the Imperium, failed the God Emperor himself. Carth Prime is gone, not destroyed, that would be mercy. It's been remade, reshaped into something that wears the skin of a world, but bleeds devotion to a thing that calls itself a goddess. I'm transmitting this from what's left of the planetary cathedral, though the walls are breathing now and the stones weep liquid that smells like copper and roses. My cogitator says I've been recording for 3 hours, but it feels like years. Time doesn't work right here anymore. Not since the moon opened its eyes. I came here to investigate reports of heresy, mining disputes, labor cult activity, standard suppression protocols. When my ship entered the system, our astropath screamed for 40 seconds straight before her skull cracked open like an egg and silver light poured out. We should have left then. We should have virus-bombed the entire planet from orbit and prayed the contamination didn't spread. But I thought I could save them. I thought faith would be enough. I was wrong. The idol is rising. I can feel her thoughts pressing against the inside of my skull, like loving hands trying to reshape my brain. She wants me to understand. She wants me to see the beauty in what she's done, what she's becoming. And the most horrifying part, I do understand. I see the elegance in the transformation, the perfection in the pattern. Every death served a purpose. Every scream was a prayer. Every drop of blood was an offering that brought her closer to manifestation. She's not chaos. She's something older, something that existed in the spaces between stars before mankind learned to make fire, before the Emperor walked among us, before anything. And now she's awake. My last order, by the authority vested in me by the Golden Throne, quarantine this system, exterminatus protocols, cyclonic torpedoes, atmospheric incendiaries, 2-stage virus bombs. Whatever it takes. Don't send rescue missions. Don't send investigation teams. Don't even send servitors. Just burn it all. Because if you don't, she'll spread to other worlds, other systems, and she doesn't conquer, she converts. Every mind that touches hers becomes another voice in her choir. Every world she claims becomes another temple. I can feel her in my thoughts now, gentle as a mother's touch. My fingers are moving without my permission, painting crescents on the floor with my own blood. It doesn't hurt. Nothing hurts anymore. There's only the peace of finally understanding, of finally belonging to something greater than the Imperium's endless, meaningless war. She's so beautiful. How did I never see it before? The moon isn't dead. It's been sleeping, waiting for us to call her name. And now she's awake, and she's hungry, and she loves us so much. I should start at the beginning, before the screaming, before the conversion, before the moon opened its eyes and taught a world what it meant to pray. Carth Prime was nothing special, a frontier mining world on the edge of imperial space, valuable only for the rare earth deposits buried deep in its crust. Population, 18 million. Most of them were indentured laborers working the deep shaft mines that honeycombed the planet like a disease. The world had 3 distinctive features: crushing atmospheric pressure at sea level that required habdomes for human habitation, gravity that was 15% heavier than Terra standard, and a moon. One moon. Designation, Carth Secundus. Dead. Lifeless. An airless sphere of grey stone that had orbited the planet for longer than imperial records stretched. Nothing lived there. Survey teams had checked it 10,000 years ago and found exactly what they expected: rock, dust, and silence. The miners called it the Watcher. Sometimes during the long shifts in the deep dark, they'd joke about it, say it was keeping an eye on them. It was a stupid name, the kind of thing that happens when human beings spend too much time in the dark, with nothing but their thoughts and the sound of drilling equipment. But then Foreman Garrett Holst saw it bleed. Garrett was a 30-year veteran of the Carth Prime Mining Consortium, a broad-shouldered man who'd spent more of his life underground than on the surface. He was competent, reliable, not the kind of man given to flights of fancy or recreational narcotics. On the 19th day of the month of the Emperor's Grace, Garrett was supervising a crew in Shaft 94, approximately 8 kilometers below the surface. The shift was going smoothly. His men were meeting quota. Then the Vox crackled. Foreman Holst. It was Menks, one of his drill operators, young, nervous. "Sir, you need to come see this." Garrett closed his data slate with a sigh that fogged his rebreather mask. "If this is about the ore samples again, it's not the ore, sir. It's the sky. The sky. 8 kilometers underground, and Menks was talking about the sky." Garrett made his way through the narrow service tunnel to the observation blister, a reinforced dome of armor cries that gave the workers a psychological break from the endless stone. Most of the time, you could see the distant surface, the light of Carth Prime's sun filtering down through kilometers of rock and atmosphere. When Garrett reached the blister, 7 miners were pressed against the glass, staring up. "What's the—" Then he saw it. The moon was red. Not the dull rust red of Mars, or the bloody crimson of some Xeno's death world. This was different. It looked like the moon was bleeding, like something had opened a wound in the stone, and viscous, luminous red was seeping out across its surface. "It's been spreading for 20 minutes, Menks whispered. His face was pale in the reflected light. Started as a spot near the southern pole and just grew. Garrett pulled up his data slate, accessing the mining consortium's astro survey feeds. The moon should look exactly as it had for 10,000 years. Gray, dead, unchanging. But the moon on his display was red too. It wasn't a malfunction. It wasn't a hallucination. It was real. "Get me aligned to surface control," Garrett said slowly. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "I need to report an astronomical anomaly." But even as he said it, he knew. Deep in his bones, in that animal part of the brain that still remembered what it was like to be prey, he knew. The moon hadn't changed. The moon was waking up. The red spread across Carth Secundus like a tide, flowing through ancient impact craters and across windless plains. Within 6 hours, the entire visible surface was the color of fresh blood, and the miners began to notice other things. The dust storms that rolled across Carth Prime's surface every afternoon, predictable, mapped, and analyzed for centuries, began to sound different. Not the usual howl of wind and particulate matter, but something else. Something almost like voices, hundreds of them, thousands, all speaking in perfect unison, forming words in a language that predated Gothic, predated Low Imperial, predated language itself. The wind was chanting. In Habdome 7, a maintenance worker named Sarah Yellen was replacing a pressure seal when she heard it. At first, she thought it was just the atmospheric regulators acting up again. But then the sound resolved into something clearer, something that bypassed her ears entirely and settled directly into her brain. We are here. We have always been here. We are waiting. Sarah dropped her wrench. The sound was impossibly loud in the sudden silence, because the storm outside had stopped. The wind that had been howling for 3 hours had simply ceased. She pressed her face against the viewport, looking out across the rust-red landscape toward the horizon where the red moon was rising. And the moon looked back. That was the first night the workers began to change. Garrett Holst was in his quarters, trying to file an incident report that didn't sound like the ravings of a madman, when he heard screaming from the common area. He grabbed his las pistol. Every foreman carried one. Standard procedure for keeping order among the indentured labor force, and ran toward the sound. The common area was a large chamber carved from solid rock, reinforced with plasteel and lit by flickering lumen strips. Now there were 30 miners in the room, and they were all screaming. Not screaming in pain, not screaming in fear, screaming in harmony. Every voice perfectly synchronized, creating a chord that made Garrett's teeth ache and his vision blur. They were standing in a circle, their arms raised toward the ceiling, as if reaching for something only they could see. "Everyone, stand down!" Garrett shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the chorus. "I said stand down!" He fired a shot into the ceiling. The last bolt left a scorch mark on the stone, and for a moment, just a moment, the screaming stopped. The miners looked at him. 30 pairs of eyes, completely black from edge to edge, reflecting no light at all. Then they smiled. All at once. The same smile. A crescent that split their faces too wide, showing too many teeth. "She's waking up," they said in unison. "Can't you feel her? Can't you feel the love?" Garrett ran. He ran back to his quarters, locked the door, and grabbed the Vox unit. His hands were shaking so badly that it took 3 tries to tune to the emergency frequency. "This is Foreman Garrett Holst, Shaft 94, requesting immediate medical support. We have I don't know what we have. Some kind of mass psychosis. Possible toxic gas leak. I need a medical team down here now." The Vox crackled. For a long moment there was only static. Then a voice, soft, feminine, impossibly clear despite the 8 kilometers of rock between him and the surface. "There is no gas, Garrett. There is only her. Only the idol. Only the love that bleeds from the moon and fills us all until we overflow." "Who is this? Identify yourself." "We are all one voice now, Garrett. All one song. Don't you want to sing with us? Don't you want to understand?" Garrett threw the Vox unit across the room. It shattered against the wall, but even broken, he could still hear it. Still hear that voice, soft and patient and infinitely loving, saying, "Join us, join us, join us." He looked up at the ceiling, through 8 kilometers of stone and atmosphere, toward the moon that had been watching his entire life. And the moon blinked. I saw the surveillance footage later. What happened to Garrett Holst in his quarters? Alone with his fear and the voice that wouldn't stop speaking. The cameras captured everything in perfect clinical detail. How he stood frozen for 7 minutes, staring at the ceiling. How his nose began to bleed. Dark droplets that fell upward instead of down, defying gravity as they drifted toward the stone above. How his mouth opened and closed, mouthing words that the audio pickups couldn't capture. How, finally, he picked up a mining drill. The drill wasn't active when he pressed it against his chest. He had to hold the activation stud for 3 full seconds before it powered up, before the diamond-tipped bit began to spin at 6,000 RPM, before it punched through his sternum and into his heart. The footage shows him standing there, drill buried in his chest, blood spraying across the walls in arterial spurts that followed impossible trajectories. It shows him smiling as the life drained out of him, his lips moving in what might have been prayer or gratitude or both. And it shows what happened next. His blood didn't pool on the floor. It drifted upward, defying gravity, rising in perfect spheres toward the ceiling. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Like crimson stars in a microscopic galaxy. The blood gathered at the highest point of the room. It began to drip, or rather, to rise through solid stone, disappearing into the ceiling as if the rock had become permeable, as if the boundaries between matter and void had become suggestions rather than laws. Going up, always up, toward the surface, toward the sky, toward the moon. By midnight, 300 workers had killed themselves in Shaft 94 alone. By dawn, the number had risen to 2,000 across all mining operations on Karth Prime. Every single one of them had sent their blood upward. The arbitrators who came to investigate found the bodies arranged in patterns, spirals and crescents, and symbols that hurt to look at directly. They found words written on the walls in gore, phrases in Gothic and Low Imperial, and languages that shouldn't exist. She wakes the moon, remembers we are her children, she is coming home. And carved into the stone with fingernails and shattered bones, repeated thousands of times across kilometers of tunnel, the idle dreams of us. The Arbites sealed the shafts, locked down the habdomes, declared martial law across the entire planet. They thought they could contain it. They thought it was just another cult uprising, another pocket of heretical contamination that could be burned away with fire and faith and the Emperor's mercy. They were wrong, because the moon wasn't done bleeding. In fact, it was just beginning to breathe. The ash began falling on the morning of the 3rd day. At first, the meteorological stations thought it was volcanic activity. Karth Prime had 3 active volcanic chains along its equatorial belt, remnants of ancient tectonic instability. Ash falls happened. They were predictable, manageable, but this ash was different. For one thing, it was falling everywhere, poles to equator, surface to stratosphere, coating the entire planet in a fine grey powder that tasted like copper and grave dirt. For another, it was falling up in some places, rising from the ground in defiance of gravity, spiraling toward the sky in columns that stretched from the planet's surface all the way to the edge of the atmosphere. And it was warm. Warmth meant organic matter. Warmth meant something had been alive, had burned, had been reduced to this soft grey snow that gathered in drifts and covered everything in a shroud the color of crematorium smoke. Senior arbitrator Helena Krask stood on the landing platform of Precinct Fortress Primus, watching the ash fall from a sky that had turned the color of old bone. She was a hard woman, veteran of 100 compliance actions, her face a roadmap of scars, and her faith in the Emperor's justice, absolute and unyielding. But she was afraid. She wouldn't admit it. not even to herself, but the fear was there. It lived in the way her hand kept drifting to her bolt pistol, in the way she checked the seals on her rebreather mask 3 times, in the way she couldn't stop looking at the red moon that hung in the sky like a watching eye. "Status report," she said into her vox bead. Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. 17 more mining stations have gone silent in the last 6 hours, her second-in-command reported. His name was Corvin, and he sounded tired. "We're sending teams to investigate, but, ma'am, we're losing them too. Entire squads just not reporting back. Xenos activity, no contact, no weapon signatures, no signs of combat at all. They're just gone." Helena watched a particularly large clump of ash drift past her face. It left a streak of grey on her visor, and for a moment, just a moment, it looked like the ash had formed a symbol, a crescent, with lines radiating from its curves like reaching fingers. She wiped it away quickly. "Deploy additional units to maintain the quarantine perimeter. No one in or out of the affected zones. Anyone showing signs of contamination is to be detained immediately. Use of lethal force is authorized. Ma'am, about the contamination, we're still not sure what we're dealing with. Medical analysis has been inconclusive. It's not a virus, not a toxin, not any kind of pathogen we recognize. It's more like an idea, something mimetic. The Medicae are calling it a faith infection." A faith infection. The words made Helena's skin crawl beneath her carapace armor. "Explain." "People are converting, ma'am. Not to chaos. We've run every test, every prayer detection protocol, every sanctified analysis ritual the ecclesiarchy has. These people aren't corrupted by the ruinous powers. They're worshipping something else, something that predates the warp storms, something that's been here, in this system, for..." Corvin trailed off. "For how long?" Helena demanded. "Records say the moon has been orbiting Carth Prime for 5 billion years, since before the planet cooled, since before anything lived here." Helena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the falling ash. "Send everything we have to the Inquisition. Full astropathic transmission. Market priority Alpha Omega. We're out of our depth." "Already sent, ma'am. 36 hours ago." And no response. The Arbites were finding the bodies now. Not just in the mines, everywhere. In the habdomes and the processing facilities, and the administrative centers. In chapels and dormitories, and even in the sealed emergency shelters that were supposed to be safe. But these weren't random deaths. These weren't the chaotic murders of chaos cultists, or the efficient killings of professional heretics. These were rituals. In Habdomi 17, a team of Arbites found 400 workers kneeling in the central plaza. All of them are dead. All of them perfectly arranged in concentric circles around a symbol painted on the ground with blood and ash, a crescent moon with rays like a dark sun. Their hands had been pressed together in prayer so tightly that the bones had fused. The flesh had melted and reformed, creating seamless joins between palms and fingers. Not from heat, not from any kind of weapon. From devotion. Mediciliana Cross examined one of the bodies, her hands steady despite the horror. She'd seen death before. In war, in famine, in the 1,000 ways humanity found to destroy itself in the Emperor's name. But this, they prayed themselves to death, she said quietly. "That's impossible," one of the Arbites said. "His name was lost to me. He'd be dead within the hour, converted and singing with the others." "Look at their hands. Look at their faces." Liana gestured to the corpses. Every face wore the same expression, beatific peace, pure, transcendent joy. They prayed with such intensity, such absolute conviction, that their bodies began to shut down. cardiac arrest from prolonged stress, starvation from refusing to eat, dehydration. They stayed here, on their knees, praying to something until their bodies simply gave out. Praying to what? Liana looked up at the red moon hanging in the sky. Even through the ashfall, it was clearly visible. It seemed to pulse, like a slow heartbeat made of light and stone. I don't think we want to know, but they were about to find out. Deeper in the mining tunnels, past the quarantine zones and the sealed bulkheads, past the point where even the Arbites were afraid to go, something was happening. In Shaft 47, approximately 12 kilometers below the surface, the miners who'd survived the first wave of suicides were gathering. 200 men and women, all of them changed. All of them connected. They stood in a gallery that had been carved from solid basalt, a space so large it could hold a cathedral. The mining consortium had excavated it centuries ago, following a vein of rare earth that had mysteriously run dry after a few months. It had been abandoned, sealed, forgotten, until now. The miners were digging again, but not for ore. They dug with their hands, tearing at the stone until their fingers broke and bled. They dug with pieces of broken equipment, with shattered bones from the dead, with anything they could use to claw deeper into the living rock. And they were singing. That same harmony. That same impossible chord that made reality hurt to perceive. Words in a language that shouldn't exist, that had never been spoken by human tongues until now. She sleeps in stone. She dreams in blood. She wakes in us. She is the love beneath the moon. The stone was changing where they touched it, becoming warmer, softer, almost organic, as if the boundary between mineral and flesh was becoming negotiable. And there at the center of the wall they were excavating, something was emerging. A shape, massive, carved from obsidian so dark it seemed to absorb light, to create a wound in reality just by existing. An idol, faceless, limbless. Just a smooth ovoid of absolute black stone, approximately 3 meters tall and covered in symbols that writhed and shifted when you looked directly at them. But it was alive. The cogitators that the miners had brought down detected it first. Biosign readings, from the stone, a heartbeat, slow, ponderous, one pulse every 30 seconds, but undeniable. The idol was alive, or something that used to be alive, or something that would become alive if given enough time and prayer and blood. The miners approached it reverently, tears streaming down their faces, their broken hands reaching out to touch the surface. And when they touched it, they changed. Their skin darkened, taking on a basaltic texture. Their eyes sank into their skulls and were replaced with smooth, featureless skin. Their mouths opened too wide, splitting at the corners, and they began to speak in perfect unison with the idol's slow heartbeat. We are the moon's children. We are the first to know her love. We are the beginning of the end. One of them, a woman named Mara Genth, who'd worked the mines for 15 years, who'd had a husband and 2 children, and dreams of buying her way out of indenture, turned to face the other workers. The ones who hadn't touched the idol yet. The ones who were still clinging to some shred of their former humanity. Come, Mara said, and her voice was no longer her own. It was deeper, older. It tasted like stone dust and ancient starlight. Come and understand. Come and be loved. Come and become part of something greater than the Emperor's lies. Some of them ran. They fled back up the tunnels, toward the surface, toward the light. The idol let them go, because it knew. It had always known. They would come back. They would all come back. The moon would make sure of it. Pause. On the surface, in Precinct Fortress Primus, Helena Krask was receiving reports that didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. Mining stations weren't just going silent anymore. They were broadcasting. Every single Vox frequency on the planet was filled with the same message, transmitted simultaneously from thousands of locations. She breathes beneath us. Just those 4 words, repeated endlessly, in Gothic and Low Imperial and Ecclesiarchal high speech and languages that the tech priests swore had been dead for millennia. She breathes beneath us. Helena's hand was on her bolt pistol now, holding it so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Corvin, I want those transmissions traced. Find the source and shut it down. We've tried, ma'am. The signal is coming from everywhere. Every Voxcaster on the planet. Even the sealed units. Even the ones that don't have power. That's impossible. So are upward falling blood and spontaneous bone fusion, ma'am. But here we are. Helena was about to respond when she noticed something. The ashfall had stopped. The grey snow that had been coating the planet for hours had simply ceased. The sky was clear. The red moon hung above them, larger than it should be, closer than it had any right to be. And there on the moon's surface, she could see them now. The shapes, the figures, thousands of them, millions of them, standing on the lunar surface in perfect formations, all facing toward Carth Prime, all reaching. Emperor, protect us, Helena whispered. The Vox crackled. Every speaker in the fortress, every comm bead, every piece of audio equipment activated simultaneously, and from every single one came the same voice. She breathes beneath us. She wakes within us. She loves us unto death and beyond. Then more quietly, more intimately, as if the voice was speaking directly into Helena's ear. Come down into the dark, Helena. Come see what we've found. Come see what's been waiting for you all along. It knew her name. It knew her. Helena drew her bolt pistol and fired 3 rounds into the primary Vox unit. The blessed ammunition tore it apart in a shower of sparks and shrapnel. But the voice continued. You can't kill what was never alive, Helena. You can't fight what loves you. Come down, come down, come down and pray with us. From below, from the mines, from kilometers of sealed tunnel and locked bulkheads, she heard it. Singing. The harmony was rising, growing louder. Closer, they were coming up. Dramatic pause, then whisper. And from the deepest mine, from the gallery where the idol pulsed with its slow, patient heartbeat, came a sound that Helena's audio recorders couldn't process, that existed in frequencies beyond human perception. The sound of something exhaling. Long, slow, patient. The idol was breathing, and its breath was frost that smelled like blood. Chapter 3. Arrival of Inquisitor Marwen. The ship came through the warp on the 7th day. The Invictus Lux, a modified Dictator-class cruiser bearing the seal of the Inquisition, had left its previous station the moment the Carth Prime astropathic messages reached them. 3 days in real space, 4 days in the warp, though time meant different things in that realm of howling madness. Inquisitor Castor Marwen stood on the bridge, watching the planet grow larger on the view screen, and felt the wrongness immediately. Marwen was old, not ancient by inquisitorial standards. He'd only been hunting heretics for 70 years, but old enough to have seen things that would break lesser minds. He'd burned chaos temples on 100 worlds. He'd stared down demons and lived. But Carth Prime felt different. It wasn't the usual miasma of warp taint. It wasn't the reality-eroding madness of demonic incursions. This was older, colder, like standing next to something so ancient that its mere existence bent the laws of reality around it. Auspex readings, Marwen asked. His voice was rough, scarred by decades of breathing recaf smoke and incense. Inconsistent, Inquisitor, the sensor officer reported. The planet registers as normal on all standard parameters: atmosphere, gravity, thermal output. But there's something else. Energy readings that shouldn't be there. They're centered on the moon. The moon? Yes, sir. Carth Secundus. It's radiating energy in wavelengths we've never encountered before. Not electromagnetic, not gravitic, something else entirely. And the readings are getting stronger. It's waking up, sir. The ship's madness. They entered orbit, and that's when the storms began. Not weather, not atmospheric disturbances. These were spatial storms. Reality itself was churning around the planet, creating eddies and vortices that the ship's Geller field struggled to navigate. "Helm, steady as she goes," Marwen commanded. "Astropathic choir, what's our situation?" There was a long pause before the choir master responded. His voice was strained. "Inquisitor, we're hearing something. All of us. A signal that's not astropathic, but somehow reaching us anyway. It's like a song, but the melody is wrong. The notes don't exist in any scale I know." "Can you block it?" "We're trying, but..." The choir master's words were cut off by a scream. It came through the Vox speakers, through the ship's internal communications, through the very walls themselves. High-pitched, sustained, the sound of a human mind encountering something it was never meant to comprehend. Marwen ran. He knew the layout by heart. Down 2 decks, past the guards who now lay on the floor, blood leaking from their ears, faces locked in transcendent terror. The astropathic choir chamber was a spherical room, lined with psychic dampening sigils and blessed silver. 7 astropaths sat in suspension harnesses. 6 of them were dead. Their bodies hung limp, smoke rising from the empty sockets where their eyes had been. The optical tissue was just gone. The 7th astropath, a woman named Solandra, was still alive, still screaming, and there was silver light coming out of her. It poured from her mouth and eyes and ears, forming shapes in the air, symbols that seemed to have too many angles, that existed in dimensions the human brain wasn't equipped to process. "Solandre," Marwen grabbed her. Her skin was cold, so cold it burned to touch. "Solandre, can you hear me?" Her head snapped toward him and her screaming stopped. Her voice, when she spoke, was not her own. It was layered, harmonized, as if 1,000 voices were speaking through her throat. "The moon sees you, Caster Marwen. It has always seen you. From the moment you entered this system, you were known." Then her skull cracked. It split along perfect geometric lines, opening like a flower, and the silver light intensified. When Marwen looked back, Solandra's body slumped. Her skull had sealed itself, but the bone was different now. Darker, covered in fine cracks that formed patterns, crescents, and rays that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. She was still breathing, still alive. But whatever Solandra had been before, she wasn't that anymore. "Seal this chamber," Marwen shouted. "No one in or out without my personal authorization. And get me a full medical team. I want her examined, quarantined, and monitored every second." The ship descended through Carth Prime's atmosphere. The exterior cameras showed massive, planet-spanning tempests. The clouds were the color of old bruises, and they smelled of rust. Not through the filters, but seeping through the metal itself. The smell of oxidizing iron, of blood exposed to air. "Inquisitor," the pilot said, fear in his voice. "The landing coordinates, they're changing." "What do you mean changing?" "The beacon from the Arbites precinct just went dark. But there's another signal now, stronger, coming from beneath the surface, 12 kilometers down, in the mine systems. Override it. Take us to the surface coordinates. I'm trying, sir, but the controls they're not responding properly. It's like something is pulling us toward that signal. The ship shuddered, grabbed by invisible hands, and was dragged. The engines roared, but they barely slowed their descent. The planet had them in its grip. The Invictus Lux hit the atmosphere at an angle that should have torn it apart. But it didn't. Something caught them, cradled them, guided their descent with impossible precision toward a landing zone that shouldn't exist. A massive cleared area marked with symbols that glowed with that same silver light. The ship settled onto the landing pad with barely a tremor, as if they'd been invited. Marwen stood in the deployment bay, surrounded by his retinue, 50 stormtroopers, 20 battle sisters of the Order of the Sacred Rose, his tech priest, psyker, and interrogator. "We deploy in full combat formation," Marwen said, "weapons hot. No one engages without my explicit command. And if anyone starts hearing voices, you report it immediately." The ramp lowered. The air that rushed in was thick. It tasted like copper and incense and something organic. And it was singing. Not loudly, but a harmony, perfect and inevitable, underneath everything. The mining complex was dead. Equipment lay abandoned. Cargo haulers sat running. A meal, half eaten, was rotting in the commissary. But no bodies. "Auspex scan," Marwen asked his tech priest, Magos Krell. "Life signs detected, Inquisitor. Approximately 15,000 human biosigns, all of them below us. In the mine systems," Krell reported. "All of them?" "Yes, Inquisitor. They appear to be gathered, in a single location, 12 kilometers down." "We're going down," Marwen said. His interrogator Thera stepped closer. "Inquisitor, perhaps we should call for reinforcements. Request an orbital bombardment. Sterilize this entire... We don't know what we're dealing with yet, Thera." "This isn't chaos," Marwen stated, feeling the ancient coldness. "This is something else. Something that exists in the spaces between chaos and order. We investigate first, then we burn." They descended into the mines. The tunnels were vast, carved out over 10,000 years. The singing was louder down here, more insistent. The harmony had become words. His sanctioned psyker, Vector, clutched his head. "It's not the warp, my lord," Vector trembled. "It's something that exists in the materium, but beneath it. Like the universe itself is speaking." They reached the 12-kilometer mark, and the tunnel opened up into a space so large, their lumen packs couldn't illuminate the far walls. The gallery, the place where the miners had been digging. In the center, Marwen saw them. 15,000 people, all kneeling, all facing the same direction, all perfectly still. They were arranged in concentric circles, hundreds of rings expanding outward from a central point, not dead, but not moving. At the center of the circles was the idol, 3 meters tall, obsidian black, smooth and featureless except for the symbols that writhed and shifted across its surface. But it wasn't the idol itself that stopped him. It was the fact that the idol was warm. Heat shimmer rose from its surface, and with each wave of heat came a pulse. Thud. 30 seconds of silence. Thud. The idol was alive. "Thera," Marwen said quietly, "get me a Vox link to the ship. I want this location marked for orbital bombardment. Precision strike, melter torpedoes. I want this entire gallery turned to glass." Before Thera could respond, the kneeling figures moved. As one. 15,000 heads raised. 15,000 pairs of eyes opened, black from edge to edge, and they smiled. "Welcome, Caster Marwen," they said in perfect unison. "We've been waiting for you. She's been waiting for you." Marwen raised his power sword. "In the name of the God Emperor of mankind, I command you to—" "The Emperor?" The voices laughed with genuine affection. "Oh, Caster, the Emperor is so young, so new. Do you know how old she is? How long she's been sleeping, waiting, loving you all from her throne of stone?" All 15,000 stood up simultaneously. The sound was like thunder. "We know her hunger. And now, Inquisitor, you will know her too." The idol pulsed. A wave of something, not thought or emotion, washed over Marwen. It whispered, "You are so tired, Caster. So tired of fighting. Don't you want to rest? Don't you want to be loved? Don't you want to finally belong to something that loves you back?" "Fire!" Marwen screamed. "Kill them all!" The stormtroopers opened up with their hell guns. The cultists didn't dodge. They just walked forward, smiling as the last fire burned through them. But they didn't fall. The holes burned through their bodies, sealed instantly. Flesh knitting back together as fast as it was destroyed. They kept walking, kept smiling, kept loving. "Fall back!" Tactical retreat too. And then the walls started bleeding. Thick red liquid seeped from cracks and flowed upward, defying gravity, spiraling toward the ceiling. "She wakes," the cultists sang. The idol's surface began to crack. Silver light poured out, and from somewhere deep below, from a depth that shouldn't exist, came a sound. Breathing. Long. Slow. Rattling. The sound of something ancient taking its first breath in 1,000,000,000 years. Marwen grabbed Thera. "Get everyone out, now. Full retreat to the surface. I'm calling for immediate orbital bombardment." His forces fought their way back. Marwen was the last to leave the gallery. He paused at the tunnel entrance, looking back, and the idol turned toward him. It shouldn't have. It was featureless. But it turned. It spoke directly into his mind, its voice beautiful and terrible. "You cannot fight me, little Inquisitor. I am what was here before the Emperor, before humanity. I am the space between stars given form. I am the love that existed before love had a name, and I am waking." Marwen ran. He ran through kilometers of tunnel. Behind him the singing followed, no longer beautiful, but a howl of madness and hunger. They reached the surface and scrambled into the Invictus Lux. The ship lifted off, even as the ramp was closing. As they rose, Marwen looked down and saw them. Millions of people pouring out of every structure, moving toward the mine entrances. All of them going down, going to pray. "Orbital bombardment coordinates locked," the weapons officer reported. "Fire," Marwen said hoarsely. "Burn it all." Lance strikes and cyclonic torpedoes, enough firepower to crack a continent, fell toward the planet. But as the weapons descended, something caught them. Carth Secundus, the dead moon. It moved. It shifted in its orbit with impossible speed, positioning itself directly between the ship and the planet, positioning itself to shield Carth Prime. The orbital bombardment struck the moon's surface. Explosions bloomed, turning kilometers of lunar surface into molten glass. And the moon didn't care. It absorbed the impacts, like a mother shielding her child. "The moon it's protecting the planet," the pilot whispered. Marwen stared at the view screen in horror. He'd never seen anything like this. A moon that moved, that thought, that cared. And the moon turned toward them. Across its grey surface, lines of red light began to appear, forming something that looked horrifyingly like a face. A face that was smiling. "Get us out of this system," Marwen said quietly. "Maximum warp speed. Don't look back." Before they could jump, a sound came through every speaker on the ship. A voice, feminine, ancient, impossibly vast, and it was laughing. The laugh echoed through the ship. Marwen fled into the warp, but as they escaped into the immaterium, he looked back one last time, and he saw the moon growing larger, closer, as if it was following them, as if there was nowhere in the galaxy they could hide. The echo of that laughter continued even after they entered the warp, and it would never, ever stop. Chapter 4. The Idol in the Deep. They made it 3 days into the warp before the crew started to turn. It began with the lower decks, the maintenance servitors, the ones who'd been closest to the planet's surface, who'd breathed the deepest of that copper-scented air, who'd heard the singing most clearly. They began to pray. At first it seemed harmless. Servitors didn't have enough independent thought left to cause real trouble. They were meat machines, lobotomized and hardwired to perform simple tasks. Prayer wasn't part of their programming, but they prayed anyway. In the engine rooms and the cargo holds and the waste reclamation systems, servitors stopped their assigned tasks and knelt. Their crude vocal processors, barely sophisticated enough to acknowledge orders, began to emit that same harmony, that same chord that made reality hurt. Marwen's tech priests tried to override their programming, tried to shut them down remotely, tried to sever their connections to the ship's systems. Nothing worked. It's like they've been rewritten, Magos Krell reported. His mechadendrites twitched nervously. A tell that Marwen had learned meant the tech priest was genuinely afraid. Not by code, not by any digital means. Their belief has been altered. They think they're praying to the Omnissiah, but the prayers are wrong. They're addressing something else, something that predates the cult Mechanicus by millions of years. Can you stop them? Only by destroying them, Inquisitor. Complete shutdown. Permanent deactivation. Do it. They killed 90 servitors that first day, shut them down one by one, their prayer songs dying in mechanical throats. But by the second day, it wasn't just the servitors anymore. Pause. Building dread. Crewman third class. Javek Horn had been aboard the Invictus Lux for 6 years. He was unremarkable. Average scores in gunnery training. Average fitness evaluations. The kind of crewman who did his job, kept his head down, and didn't cause trouble. He was found in Storage Bay 7 at 0400 hours ship time, naked and covered in his own blood. He'd used a piece of broken glass to carve symbols into his skin, crescents and spirals that covered every inch of exposed flesh, from his face to his feet. The cuts were deep enough that he should have bled out hours ago. But he was still alive, still conscious, still smiling. She showed me, Javek said when the security team found him. His voice was dreamy, distant. In my sleep, she came to me and showed me the truth about everything, about the Emperor, about the Imperium, about the lie we've been living for 10,000 years. Get him to the Medicae, the security sergeant ordered, and someone get the Inquisitor. The Emperor is a corpse, Javek continued, still smiling that too wide crescent smile. A rotting thing clinging to a golden throne, too afraid to let go, too selfish to die. But she's alive. She's been alive since before stars existed, and she loves us. She loves us so much it hurts, so much it breaks us, so much we can't help but love her back. The security sergeant raised his last pistol. In the name of the God Emperor. The Emperor never loved you, Javek said, but she does. She sees you. She knows you. Every fear, every doubt, every moment you felt alone in the darkness of the void. She knows, and she forgives, and she welcomes. The sergeant fired. The last bolt took Javek in the chest, burning through his heart. Javek fell, but he fell smiling, and his last words were, "Thank you. Thank you for releasing me." Now I can go to her. By the third day, 17 crew members had been executed for heresy. By the fourth day, it was 43. The infection was spreading, and Marwen had no idea how to stop it. Sound of a door opening, footsteps. Marwen hadn't slept since they left Karth Prime. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it. The idol, the moon, the 15,000 cultists with their black eyes and crescent smiles. And he heard it. That voice, that vast, terrible, beautiful voice that had spoken directly into his mind. I am waking. He was in his quarters, surrounded by picked screens, showing security footage from every deck of the ship, watching, waiting, looking for the next sign of infection. That's when Thera entered without knocking. Her face was pale. "Sir, we have a problem. A big one." "What now?" "It's Solandra, the astropath who survived. She's awake." Marwen was on his feet immediately. "I gave explicit orders that she was to be kept sedated and restrained." "We tried, sir, but the restraints failed. The drug infusions stopped working. She just woke up, and she's asking for you, by name." They made their way to the medical bay, where Solandra was being held in an isolation cell. The walls were lined with hexagrammic wards and sanctified silver, enough protective scripture to repel most demonic entities. But Solandra wasn't possessed by a demon. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her broken skull healed into those strange geometric patterns. Her empty eye sockets didn't weep or bleed. They were just smooth, as if her eyes had never existed, and she was smiling. "Castor," she said, and her voice was different, layered, multiple tones speaking in harmony. "I'm so glad you came. We have so much to discuss. Solandra, can you hear me? Do you know who I am? Of course I know who you are. I know everything about you. Your fears, your doubts, the nightmares you've had every night for the last 47 years. I know about the village you burned on Crescent 4, about the child you found in the ashes, still alive, still crying. I know what you did to her." Marwen's blood went cold. No one knew about that. Not even his confession to the Emperor had been that specific. "Who are you?" "I'm Solandra. But I'm also more than Solandra. I'm a small part of something vast. Something that's been sleeping for so long that even the stars have forgotten it existed. But it's waking now, Castor. She's waking because you found her. Because you called to her, even though you didn't know it. I called nothing. I came to Karth Prime to root out heresy. And you succeeded. But not the heresy you expected. Not chaos. Not the ruinous powers. Something older. Something that existed before the warp was born. Before the war in heaven. Before the old ones themselves. She tilted her head, and even without eyes, Marwen could feel her looking at him. "Would you like to know what she is, Castor? Would you like to understand? I don't want anything from you or the thing that corrupted you." "Corrupted?" Solandra laughed. It was a beautiful sound, like music played on instruments made of starlight. "Oh, Castor, I'm not corrupted. I'm completed. For the first time in my miserable, blind, painful life, I can see. Really see. And what I see is so beautiful it makes me want to weep. Tell me how to stop it." "You can't stop it. It's already done. The moment you set foot on that planet, the moment you felt her attention, you were changed. We all were. The infection isn't in our blood or our genes or our souls. It's in our awareness. Once you know she exists, once you've felt her love, you can never unknow it. It becomes part of you, and slowly, inevitably, it consumes everything else until only the love remains." I will resist. The Emperor will protect. The Emperor, Solandra interrupted, and there was genuine pity in her voice now, cannot help you. He's too far away, too weak, too focused on holding back the chaos that's been gnawing at his door for 10,000 years. But she's close. She's on this ship, in your crew, in you. Every time you think of her, every time you try to understand what you saw, you're making her stronger. You're feeding her with your attention, your fear, your desperate need to comprehend. Marwen's hand went to his bolt pistol. Killing me won't change anything, Solandra said calmly. I'm just one voice in a choir that spans star systems now. Kill me, and 10 others will take my place. 100, 1,000. We are Legion, Caster, and we are growing. What does it want? Want? Solandra seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. She doesn't want anything. Wanting implies lack. She simply is. She is the love that was here before anything else existed, the first emotion the universe felt when it sparked into being. And now that she's awake, now that she's remembered what it feels like to be loved back, she's going to share that love with everyone. Every human, every Xenos, every living thing in this galaxy and beyond. That's not love. That's conquest, number, conversion. Closer, but still not quite right. It's elevation. She's going to raise us all to her level, make us all part of something greater. No more war, no more suffering, no more loneliness. Just endless, eternal, perfect love. That's horrifying. Is it? Solandra stood, moving with inhuman grace despite her withered body. Or is it just different from what you're used to? Humanity has been at war for so long, Caster. 30,000 years of endless fighting against orcs and Eldar and Tyranids and each other. Don't you ever wonder what peace would feel like? Real peace. Not the fragile ceasefires and temporary truces the Imperium calls peace, but actual, genuine, eternal peace. At the cost of free will, at the cost of our humanity. Humanity, Solandra whispered, is a prison. We wear it like chains, never realizing that the key has been in our pocket all along. She's offering to unlock those chains, to free us from the suffering and fear and hatred that define human existence. All we have to do is accept her love. I would rather die. You will, Solandra said, and she sounded genuinely sad. Everyone who resists her will die. But death isn't the end, Caster. Death is just another form of transformation. And on the other side, she'll be waiting, ready to embrace you, ready to show you everything you've been missing. Marwen raised his bolt pistol and fired. The blessed round took Solandra in the chest, the explosive tip detonating inside her ribcage, tearing her apart from the inside. She fell without a sound, her body broken, her life ended. But as she died, she was still smiling. And her last words, whispered so quietly that only Marwen could hear them. She forgives you. She loves you. She'll wait for you. Long pause. Marwen ordered the body incinerated. Not just killed, destroyed. Burned to ash and scattered into space. But it didn't matter. Solandra had told him the truth. The infection wasn't in their bodies. It was in their minds. In the simple act of knowing that the idol existed, they'd been changed, contaminated, marked, and there was no cure for knowledge. By the time they reached the edge of the Karth system, preparing to make another warp jump to take them back to Imperial space, 67 crew members had been executed for heresy. 67 out of a crew of 300. And Marwen knew with absolute certainty that it wouldn't stop. The ship broke warp at the edge of the system, and Marwen gave the order to prepare for another jump. Anywhere, any destination that would take them away from this cursed place. But before they could activate the warp drive, the sensors lit up. "Inquisitor," the sensor officer said, her voice shaking. We have a contact, coming from the direction of Carth Prime." "What kind of contact?" I don't know how to classify it. It's big, approximately 3,000 kilometers in diameter, and it's moving toward us at Emperor's Mercy, at 0.7 light speed. Marwen looked at the display. It was the moon. Carth Secundus had torn itself out of orbit and was now hurtling through space toward them, moving with impossible speed, pursuing them. "Evasive maneuvers! Get us into the warp now." The ship turned, engines screaming, reality beginning to tear open around them. But the moon was faster. It didn't collide with them. It didn't attack. It simply passed by, close enough that they could see its surface in perfect detail, close enough to see the figures standing there, thousands of them, millions of them, standing on the lunar surface without suits, without protection, simply existing in the void. All of them facing the ship, all of them smiling. And as the moon passed, as it disappeared into the black, a message came through the Vox, not transmitted, not broadcast, simply there, appearing on every speaker, every screen, every surface that could carry information. A single image, a carving, ancient beyond measure, showing a figure of impossible beauty and terrible power, surrounded by worshippers, wrapped in crescents and spirals. Beneath it, in Gothic that seemed to have been freshly written, despite its obvious antiquity, a single phrase: "The idol dreams of you." The ship made it into the warp, made it back to Imperial space, but they brought something with them, something that couldn't be left behind. They brought the knowledge, and knowledge, once gained, spreads faster than any plague. Chapter 5. Whispers in the Stone. Marwen's ship limped into the Mandragora system 3 weeks after fleeing Carth Prime. 3 weeks that felt like 3 years. Time had become fluid aboard the Invictus Lux, stretching and compressing in ways that made the crew question their chronometers and their sanity. They'd lost another 140 crew members during the journey, most to execution, some to suicide, a handful of something worse, transformations that happened too quickly to stop. Marwen stood on the bridge, looking at his reflection. His eyes were bloodshot. His face was gaunt, and there at his temples, just barely visible beneath his hair, were thin, dark lines, cracks in porcelain. They felt warm, wrong. "Inquisitor," Thera's voice broke through. "We're being hailed by the orbital station. They want to know our business. Tell them we need emergency docking, full quarantine protocols, and get me a secure astropathic link to the Inquisitorial Fortress on Ophelia 7, priority Alpha Omega." But even as he gave the orders, Marwen knew. The infection had already spread beyond Carth Prime, beyond his ship, beyond anything they could contain. Back on Carth Prime, in the tunnels that honeycombed the planet like diseased tissue, the miners had been digging for 6 days straight without rest, food, or water. The idol's love sustained them. It filled them with purpose and energy that transcended mere biological needs. They dug deeper, always deeper, following the whispers that came from below, from places that shouldn't exist on a planet this size. The stone itself was speaking now, words that bypassed ears entirely and settled directly into the spaces where thoughts formed. "Dig deeper, my children. Dig down to where the old bones sleep. Dig down to me." They carved through basalt and granite, through rock that bled when struck, weeping liquid that tasted like starlight and ancient devotion. And in one of the deepest galleries, approximately 40 kilometers below the surface, far deeper than the crust should logically extend, they found it. The cathedral. It had been there all along, buried, waiting for the first prayer to wake it from slumber that predated geology. The space was vast beyond comprehension. The miners' lights couldn't reach the far walls. Everywhere were carvings that seemed to move when you looked away, whispering secrets in languages that had never been spoken aloud. The carvings showed scenes, a moon orbiting a molten world, the first life emerging, the first creatures to look up and feel wonder, the first prayer, and at the center of the cathedral, carved from the living stone of the planet itself, was a throne, empty, waiting. The miners approached reverently. Their hands were bleeding, their fingernails torn away, but they felt no pain. One of them, a woman who now answered only to faithful, stepped forward. She placed her ruined hands on the armrests, and the stone was warm, alive, pulsing with that slow heartbeat. "She's been here all along," the woman whispered, "sleeping in the heart of the world. And we woke her. Our prayers, our blood, our love woke her." The stone beneath the throne began to crack, not shattering, but opening, like a womb. And from those cracks came light, that same silver light that had poured from Solandra's skull, brighter now, stronger. The light filled the cathedral, and the miners fell to their knees in ecstasy, because they could feel her now, not as a distant presence, but here, now. R-E-A-L. The throne was hatching. On the surface, in what remained of the planetary government center, arbitrator Helena Krask was making her last stand. She'd barricaded herself in the communications tower with the remaining loyal enforcers, 20 men and women who'd somehow resisted the call. Outside the tower, gathered in silent ranks that stretched to the horizon, were the changed. 50,000 of them, maybe more. They weren't attacking. They were just waiting. "How long before the reinforcements arrive?" Helena asked her Vox operator. "No response from any Imperial forces, ma'am. We're still transmitting, but I think we're being jammed or ignored. Ma'am, the astropathic signals we've been receiving from other systems in this sector, they're wrong. They sound like they're singing." Helena looked out at the red moon hanging overhead, close enough now that she could see the figures standing there. Thousands of them, all reaching down. "It's spreading," she whispered. "Emperor's mercy, it's spreading beyond this world." A sound made her turn. One of her enforcers, Korvax, was standing in the corner, whispering. He turned and his eyes were black, completely black. "I'm sorry, Helena," he said, genuinely regretful. "I tried to resist. But she's so beautiful. Her love is so perfect. I don't want to fight it anymore." He raised his lapistol, not toward Helena, toward himself. He fired. The last bolt took him in the temple, killing him instantly. His body fell. Blood pooled across the floor, spreading in patterns, crescents and spirals, and the blood began to move, crawling toward the wall. Where it touched, the stone softened and disappeared, traveling down through the crust, down to feed the thing that was waking. "They're inside!" someone shouted. Helena grabbed her bolt pistol and ran toward the stairs. When the changed came up, they didn't attack. They just walked, calmly, arms outstretched as if offering an embrace. "She loves you," they said in unison. "She's loved you since the moment you were born. Won't you let her show you the truth?" "Fire!" Helena screamed. The enforcers opened up. Last fire and bolt rounds tore through the changed, but they kept coming, kept walking through the fire as if it meant nothing. One of them, a child, reached an enforcer, touched his hand. The enforcer's gun fell. Oh, I see. Why didn't anyone tell me it was this simple? It's love. Real love. Helena shot him. She was the last one now. The last mind on Karth Prime that remained her own. The whispers were everywhere now. In the walls. In the air. Come to us, Helena. Come down into the dark. Come see what's been waiting since the universe was young. Her finger wouldn't pull the trigger. Some deep, primal part of her wanted to go, wanted to understand. The bolt pistol fell from her hand. Helena Krask walked down the stairs, walked out into the streets where 50,000 changed waited. They parted for her, creating a path to the mine entrance. She walked because she chose to, or because she had no choice. After hours of descending, Helena reached the cathedral. She fell to her knees, not from fear, but from awe. The throne was no longer empty. Something sat there now. Something that was still forming, still pulling itself from intersecting dimensions. It looked like a woman. 3 meters tall. 10. Her dimensions seemed to shift. Her skin was the color of moonlight. Where her eyes should be were crescents of silver light. And she was beautiful. So beautiful it hurt. The idol spoke. Its voice was inside her head and outside it simultaneously. Welcome home, little one. I've been waiting for you. What? What are you? Helena managed to whisper. I am what was here before anything else. Before matter. Before energy. I am the first emotion the universe felt when it sparked into existence from nothing. The first love. The idol leaned forward. Its attention was like an ocean of liquid starlight. I have been sleeping for so long, but you're kind. You called to me. Your prayers, your hopes, your endless futile yearning for something to love you back. And I heard. And I woke. We prayed to the Emperor. The Emperor is a child playing God. I was old when the first stars ignited, and now I am awake, and I am going to share my love with all creation. I am going to free them from the prison of individuality, from the curse of loneliness. That's not love, Helena said. That's annihilation. No, little one. This is a transformation. This is evolution. You will become part of me, and you will never be alone again, never suffer again. The idol reached out. Its hand was made of silver light and promises. All you have to do is accept my love. Helena looked at the hand. She thought of the Imperium, taking and demanding sacrifice, offering cold approval. But this was warm. This was a love that asked nothing and offered everything. Helena reached out. Her hand touched the idol's, and the world exploded into silver light and perfect understanding and endless, boundless, overwhelming love. When Helena's consciousness reassembled, she was no longer herself. She was herself plus everything else, every mind that had touched the idol's awareness. They were all one now. We understand, they said with one voice, through 10 million throats. We understand everything now. Why we exist. And oh, it's so beautiful. The whispers in the stone had become a roar. And what they said was, the idol is risen the moon, remembers the bride ascends, we are one, we are love, we are eternal. The planet shuddered, not from seismic activity, from joy. On the surface, the stone began to sing. The actual rock, the minerals, the molecular structure of the planet itself began to vibrate in harmony with the changed song. Karth Prime was waking up. The entire planet was becoming aware, becoming a living extension of the thing that had been sleeping in its heart for 5 billion years.
And as it woke, one message repeated endlessly through every frequency, every wavelength.
She breathes beneath us. She wakes within us. She loves us unto death and beyond. And soon, so very soon, she will love you too. Chapter 6. The Hollow Moonlight. The lumens failed across Carth Prime at 0300 hours on the 9th day. Not a power failure, not a technical malfunction. They just stopped. Every light source on the planet, from the massive plasma generators that powered the Hab domes to the simple chemical glow sticks the miners carried, all of them went dark simultaneously, plunging 18 million souls into absolute perfect darkness. For exactly 30 seconds, there was no light anywhere on Carth Prime except for the stars overhead. Distant, cold, indifferent. Then the moon began to glow. Not the red it had been before. This was different. This was silver white, pure, clean, beautiful. The light that poured from Carth Secundus was soft, gentle, like moonlight filtered through mist. It illuminated everything with perfect clarity, casting no shadows, creating no darkness. Every corner, every crevice, every hiding place was revealed. And in that light, things became visible that shouldn't exist. The shadows moved without bodies to cast them. At first, people thought it was a trick of the eye, the unusual lighting creating optical illusions. But no, the shadows were moving with purpose, with intelligence. They slid across walls and floors like living things, pooling in corners, stretching across doorways, reaching with fingers made of absence. In Habdome 7, one of the few structures where unchanged humans still survived, barricaded behind sealed bulkheads and praying to the Emperor for salvation, a family huddled together in their quarters. Father, mother, 2 children. The youngest was crying, had been crying for hours, terrified of the darkness that had swallowed their world. But now the moonlight poured through their window, and the crying stopped. "Look," the child said, pointing. "Look at the pretty light." The father grabbed his son, pulling him away from the window. "Don't look at it. Don't look at the moon. That's what they want. That's how it spreads." But it was too late. The moonlight touched the child, and the child smiled. That crescent smile, that expression of pure, transcendent joy. "Papa," the child said, and his voice was layered now, harmonized. "Papa, don't you see? Don't you feel how much she loves us? We don't have to be afraid anymore. We don't have to hide. We just have to accept." "No," the father whispered. "No, no, no." But the moonlight was spreading through the room now, touching everything, illuminating everything. And where it touched, change followed. The mother gasped. Her shadow had detached from her body. It stood behind her, a perfect silhouette, but it was moving independently, raising its arms, reaching for her. "What?" She tried to back away, but the shadow followed, always at the same distance, always reaching. "What's happening to me?" Her shadow touched her, and she screamed, not in pain, in understanding, in the sudden, overwhelming comprehension of everything she'd been missing, everything she'd been denying, everything she'd been too afraid to accept. When the screaming stopped, she was smiling too. "Oh," she said softly. "Oh, I see now. I was so foolish, so afraid for no reason. She just wants us to be happy. She just wants us to be together, forever." She turned to her husband, her black eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "Don't you want to be happy? Don't you want to be loved?" The father ran, grabbed his remaining child, the daughter, the one who hadn't been touched yet, and fled from the quarters, out into the corridors, down toward the emergency shelters, deeper in the dome. But the moonlight was everywhere. pouring through viewports, seeping through ventilation shafts, finding every crack, every gap, every possible opening. And wherever it touched, shadows came alive. The father made it to the shelter, sealed the blast door behind him, triple-checked the locks. His daughter was trembling in his arms. "Daddy, I'm scared. I want Mommy. I want..." "Shh," he whispered. "It's okay. We're safe here. The door is blessed. The walls are thick. Nothing can get through. We just have to wait for reinforcements. The Emperor will send help. He has to." But even as he said it, he saw it. His shadow, cast by the dim emergency lumens that still functioned in the shelter. It was wrong. The angle was impossible. The light source was behind him. But his shadow stretched in front, growing larger, darker, more present. "No," he whispered. "Please, not me. Not..." The shadow reached out and touched him, and the father understood. Everything he'd been fighting, everything he'd been afraid of, it was all unnecessary. All the pain and fear and desperate clinging to a faith that had never loved him back. It could all end. Right now, with one simple choice: to accept the love that had been waiting for him since before he was born. He looked down at his daughter. Her face was pale in the moonlight that was somehow finding its way even into this sealed shelter. Her eyes were wide with terror. "It's okay, sweetie," he said gently. "Everything's going to be okay. Daddy understands now, and soon you will too." He reached for her, and his hands were kind, gentle, loving, and his daughter screamed, "Pause." Across Karth Prime, in every sealed shelter and every barricaded HAB unit, and every last desperate stronghold of human resistance, the same scene played out. The moonlight found them. The shadows came alive, and one by one, the remaining unchanged fell. Not through violence, not through force, through love. Through the simple, overwhelming power of being seen, being known, being accepted completely and utterly. How do you fight something that loves you? By dawn, though there was no sun anymore, just the eternal silver glow of the moon, Karth Prime had no more resistance, no more holdouts, no more desperate prayers to a distant emperor who couldn't hear them or wouldn't answer. 18 million souls, one consciousness, one purpose. The planet was complete. In the cathedral beneath the surface, the idol sat upon its throne and felt the completion like a physical sensation, like a puzzle piece sliding into place, like a wound finally healing. 18 million minds joined to its own, 18 million hearts beating in perfect synchronization with its pulse, 18 million voices singing the same song. It was beautiful, but it wasn't enough. The idol stood. Reality warped around it as it rose from the throne, its form becoming more solid, more real. No longer just a presence, no longer just a consciousness. It was becoming physical, becoming manifest, becoming ready. It reached out with senses that existed beyond the physical, felt the connections spreading through the system, through the warp, through the vast network of thoughts and prayers and unconscious yearnings that bound all sentient life together. It felt Marwen's ship, fleeing toward Imperial space, carrying the infection with it. It felt like another world, other systems, other billions of souls who didn't yet know they were loved, who didn't yet understand what was waiting for them. And it felt the moon, Karth Secundus. It's the first home. It's the oldest temple, the stone that had cradled it through eons of sleep. Come, the idol thought. And the thought was a command that reality itself had to obey. Come to me, my faithful servant. Come and be made flesh. Come and help me spread this gift to all creation. The moon responded. On what remained of Marwen's ship, now designated by Imperial Command as a plague vessel, to be destroyed on sight. The sensors went mad. "Inquisitor!" the sensor officer screamed. "The moon! It's Emperor's Mercy. It's moving!" Marwen rushed to the bridge, though he already knew what he'd see. Had known since they fled. Had known since the moment he first heard the whispers. Carth Secundus was no longer orbiting the planet. It was rising, pulling itself free from gravity's embrace, ascending, but not into space, into something else. Some direction that shouldn't exist. Some dimension that intersected with reality at angles that made the human brain hurt to contemplate. The moon was folding itself through impossible geometries, transforming from a three-dimensional sphere into something else. Something with too many angles, too many surfaces, existing in spaces between spaces. And it was getting closer to the planet, not physically, spiritually, metaphysically. It was merging with Carth Prime, the two celestial bodies becoming one, stone and consciousness, and love flowing together like water. "Sir," the helm officer said, his voice shaking, "if the moon merges with the planet, the gravitational disruption alone will destroy the entire system," Marwen finished. "Every planet, every moon, everything within 100 astronomical units will be torn apart by tidal forces. Shouldn't we warn someone? The nearby systems? Who would believe us?" Marwen asked quietly. "Who would listen to a madman raving about a moon that thinks, and an idol that spreads love like plague? Number. All we can do is run, and pray we run far enough, fast enough." But even as he said it, he knew they wouldn't, couldn't, because the infection was already aboard, already spreading, and everywhere it spread, the idol's awareness grew. Soon, there would be nowhere left to run. Back to Carth Prime. The moonlight intensified, became so bright that looking up was painful, became so overwhelming that it began to burn, not with heat, with meaning, with significance, with the sheer weight of attention from something so vast that its mere regard was enough to ignite matter. And where the moonlight touched flesh, things began to happen. The change didn't just smile anymore. They began to transform. Their skin took on a luminescent quality, glowing softly with that same silver light. Their eyes became deeper, darker, infinite wells that reflected nothing but showed everything. And they began to float. Gravity released them, let them go. 18 million people rising slowly into the air, arms outstretched, faces turned toward the moon, rising to meet their goddess, rising to become part of her. In the cathedral, the idol spread its arms, and the gesture mirrored across 18 million bodies. When it spoke, 18 million mouths moved in perfect synchronization. "My children, my faithful, my beloved." The waiting is over. The preparation is complete. Now comes the union. Now comes the ascension. Now comes the moment when we become more. The floating bodies began to glow brighter, hotter, their molecular structures breaking down, reforming, transcending. They weren't dying, they were evolving, becoming something that was part matter, part energy, part pure consciousness, becoming extensions of the idol itself. And as they transformed, the moonlight that touched them left marks. Burns, but beautiful burns. Scars that formed patterns across their skin, crescents and spirals, and symbols that glowed like molten silver. The moonlight's touch was painful, was ecstatic, was everything a human being could feel compressed into a single, eternal moment. And when the transformation was complete, when all 18 million had been remade, they began to sing. Not the harmony they'd been singing before, This was something greater. This was the music that stars make when they're born, the sound of reality bending, the voice of creation itself. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 minds, people stopped what they were doing and looked up, because they heard it, faint, distant, but unmistakable. The song was spreading, and it was calling them home. Chapter 7. The Desecrated Chapel. The Ecclesiarchy had maintained a presence on Karth Prime for 6,000 years. The Chapel of the Eternal Vigil stood at the highest point of the primary habdome, its spire reaching toward the sky like an accusing finger pointed at heaven. It was a modest structure by imperial standards. No soaring buttresses, no armies of servo skulls, just honest rockcrete and faith, serving a population that barely had time to pray between shifts. Father Matthias had served this chapel for 43 years. He'd baptized children and married couples and given last rites to the dying. He'd preached the Emperor's word to congregations that were more concerned with meeting their mining quotas than achieving salvation. He was a faithful man, a good man, and he was about to witness something that would shatter everything he believed. It started on the 8th day, just after the moonlight began. Father Matthias was in the chapel, alone, trying to pray, trying to drown out the singing that came from outside, from everywhere, that harmony that made his teeth ache and his vision blur. He knelt before the great Aquila, the double-headed eagle that symbolized the Emperor's dominion over all humanity. Golden, eternal, unwavering. "Emperor," he whispered, "grant me strength. Grant me the faith to resist. Grant me..." The Aquila moved. Not much, just a twitch, a slight shifting of the two heads, as if the golden eagle was looking at something, looking at him. Father Matthias froze. He'd been a priest long enough to know that sometimes, in moments of great crisis, the faithful experienced visions, hallucinations brought on by stress and fear. But this didn't feel like a hallucination. The Aquila's twin heads turned further until both were facing him directly, and where the eyes should be, simple indentations in the metal, there was now light. Silver light. Familiar light. Moonlight. "No," Father Matthias whispered. "No, this is sacred ground. Blessed by the Ecclesiarchy. Sanctified by 10,000 prayers. The corruption can't reach here. It can't..." The Aquila began to change. The two heads, which had pointed in opposite directions for millennia, began to move, to merge, flowing together like liquid metal, reforming into something new, something that looked like a crescent moon. Father Matthias stumbled backward, his faith crumbling like sand. "Emperor, preserve me. Emperor, protect me. Emperor..." But the Emperor wasn't listening, or couldn't hear, or, and this was the thought that terrified him most, didn't care. The Crescent Aquila spoke, not with words, with that same harmonized voice that had been calling across the planet for days. "He never loved you, Matthias. You've served him for 43 years. And what has he given you? Silence, absence, the cold comfort of faith without feeling. But she loves you. She has always loved you. And she's waiting for you to come home." "Lies," Father Matthias spat. "The Emperor is humanity's salvation. He is the light in the darkness. He is a corpse on a throne," the voice continued, patient and kind. "A thing that should have died 10,000 years ago, clinging to existence through sheer stubbornness and the suffering of others. He demands sacrifice. She offers gifts. He commands obedience. She gives understanding. He rules through fear. She loves without condition." The chapel's other icons began to change. The murals depicting the Emperor's crusade against the darkness, the statues of saints and martyrs, the prayer strips and purity seals, all of them warping, melting, reforming into crescents and spirals and symbols that hurt to look at. The chapel itself was being converted. Sound of stone groaning, reality bending. Father Matthias ran to the great doors, intending to flee, to escape this desecration. But the doors wouldn't open. They'd sealed themselves, or been sealed by something else, by the building itself, which was no longer just stone and metal, but something alive, something aware, something that made him stay, to witness, to understand. "Let me out," he screamed, pounding on the doors. "In the Emperor's name I command." Behind him a sound, a wet, organic sound, like meat sliding against stone. He turned slowly, already knowing what he'd see. The altar, the sacred table where he'd performed communion for 4 decades, where he'd blessed the faithful and granted them the Emperor's mercy. It was bleeding. Not water, not wine, blood, real blood, hot and red and alive, pouring from cracks in the stone as if the altar itself had veins, as if it had always had veins, and they were just now becoming visible. And in that blood, shapes were forming. Reflections that showed things that weren't in the room, showed the cathedral beneath the planet's surface, showed the idol on its throne, showed 18 million transformed faithful rising into the air, their bodies glowing with silver light, their voices raised in eternal song, showed the truth. Father Matthias fell to his knees, not in prayer, in despair, because he understood now. The Emperor, his Emperor, the God he'd served his entire life, wasn't coming to save him, wasn't going to intervene, wasn't going to perform a miracle. The Emperor was too far away, too weak, too focused on other wars. Karth Prime was beneath his notice. Its people were expendable. Their suffering was irrelevant. But she was here, present, close. Her love was immediate and overwhelming, and real. Father Matthias's voice cracked. "I don't know what to do. I've served the Emperor my whole life. If I abandon him now, if I accept this thing, what does that make me?" "It makes you honest," the chapel whispered. "It makes you brave enough to accept love when it's offered. It makes you finally free." The blood on the altar began to flow toward him, not spilling over the edge, flowing up, defying gravity, reaching for him like gentle hands. "I'm afraid," Father Matthias admitted. Tears streamed down his face. "I'm so afraid." "We know," the chapel said. "Fear is natural. Fear means you still care. But on the other side of fear is peace. On the other side of fear is belonging. On the other side of fear is US." The blood touched his hands, and Father Matthias felt her, felt the idol's vast consciousness brush against his own, felt the 18 million faithful welcoming him, felt love, real, genuine, overwhelming love, for the first time in his life. It was too much, too beautiful, too perfect. He tried to resist, tried to remember his vows, tried to cling to the Emperor's distant light, but he was so tired, so alone, and she was right there, offering everything he'd ever needed. Father Matthias stopped resisting. Pause. When the transformation was complete, when Father Matthias stood once more as something more than he'd been before, he looked at the chapel with new eyes. It was beautiful. It had always been beautiful, but he just hadn't been able to see it properly. The way the symbols flowed into each other, the way the moonlight turned everything silver, the way the very stones sang with devotion. He walked to the altar, no longer bleeding, or perhaps still bleeding, but in ways his old eyes couldn't perceive. and placed his hands on its surface. "I will spread her word," he said, and his voice was layered with harmonies. "I will show the others what I've seen. I will bring them all home." The chapel's doors opened, not because he'd commanded them, because they were ready, because he was ready. Father Matthias walked out into the moonlight, and the silver glow embraced him like a lover. Behind him, the chapel of the Eternal Vigil stood transformed. The aquila above its entrance no longer depicted the Emperor's two-headed eagle. It showed a crescent moon, beautiful, perfect, true, and from inside, where the altar had bled and the walls had sung, came a sound. The sound of wax tears falling upward from the candles, drops of liquid paraffin defying gravity, rising toward the ceiling, disappearing into stone, rising to feed the thing that was waking beneath them. The chapel had died. The chapel had been reborn. And across Carth Prime, in every church and shrine and prayer house, the same transformation was occurring. Every sacred space devoted to the Emperor was being gently, lovingly, inevitably converted. Not destroyed, not desecrated in the traditional sense, corrected. Chapter 8. The Black Sea Beneath. The mines were collapsing, not from structural failure, not from seismic activity. They were collapsing inward. The tunnels and shafts and galleries that had taken 10,000 years to excavate, all flowing down, down, down toward the cathedral, toward the throne, toward her. The rock itself was becoming liquid, not molten, not melted, just negotiable, flowing like water but remaining solid to the touch, existing in a state that physics couldn't properly describe. And as the mines collapsed, they revealed something beneath them, something that had been there all along, hidden below the lowest shafts, deeper than any miner had ever reached. A sea. Sound of water but wrong. Too thick. Too alive. It was vast. Impossibly vast. Stretching for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. A subterranean ocean that shouldn't exist on a planet this size. That violated every law of geology and planetary formation. But it was there. Had always been there. Waiting. The liquid was black. Not the black of oil or ink or shadow. The black of absolute absence. The black of the spaces between stars. Looking at it hurt. Not because it was too dark, but because it was too empty. Like staring into a hole in reality. And there were things in it. Figures. Humanoid, but wrong. Standing upright in the liquid, perfectly still. Their faces turned toward the surface. Toward the sky. Toward the moon. They'd been there for billions of years. Waiting. Sleeping. Dreaming of the day when the first prayer would wake them. And now that day had come. Build tension slowly. The first miners to reach the sea's edge stood at the boundary between solid rock and impossible liquid. They should have been terrified, should have fled, should have recognized this as wrongness beyond comprehension. Instead, they felt welcomed. The sea wanted them, not to drown them, not to destroy them, to embrace them, to show them what had been waiting all this time. One of them, a man who'd once had a name but now answered only to his purpose, stepped forward. His foot touched the liquid. It was warm, body temperature, and it didn't feel wet. It felt like being touched, like being held, like being loved by something so vast that its affection felt like drowning in the best possible way. He walked into the sea. The liquid rose to his ankles, his knees, his waist, his chest, and he kept walking. Down, always down, following the slope that descended into depths that couldn't exist. The other miners followed, hundreds of them, thousands, walking into the Black Sea with expressions of transcendent peace. And as they descended, as the liquid closed over their heads, they didn't die, didn't suffocate, they just changed. Their bodies became permeable. The sea flowed into them, through them, as them. They remained solid. You could still see their shapes, their forms, but they were no longer entirely physical. They existed in that liminal space between matter and void. And they could see now, really see, not with eyes, but with some deeper sense that lets them perceive reality's true structure. They saw the other figures in the sea, the ancient ones, the things that had been waiting since before humanity existed, and they recognized them, family. These were the idol's first children, the ones who'd prayed before prayer had words, before consciousness had language, before thought had form. They'd been sleeping here, in this impossible sea, for eons beyond counting, waiting for the cycle to begin again, waiting for a new species to evolve, to develop awareness, to look up at the moon and feel that first spark of wonder, waiting to be loved again. The voice of the sea, speaking through 1,000 drowned mouths. "Welcome," the ancient ones said, and their voices were the sound of oceans grinding against continental shelves. "Welcome home, children of the new cycle. We've been waiting so long to meet you." The miners tried to speak, but words didn't work here. Language was too crude, too limiting. Instead, they communicated through pure meaning, through shared consciousness, through the understanding that came from being part of something greater. "Who are you?" the miners asked without words. "We are what you will become," the ancient ones replied. "We are the beloved of the idol. We are the faithful of the first dawn. We served her when stars were young. We loved her when the universe itself was still learning what love meant. And now we wake to serve again, to love again, to spread her gifts to all creation. What happened to you? Why are you here?" "We completed our purpose. We spread her love across our galaxy until every thinking being had been touched by her grace. And when our work was done, when every voice sang in harmony, we came here to sleep, to wait, to dream of the next cycle, of you." The ancient ones moved, slowly. Their bodies had been still for so long that motion itself seemed to cause them pain, but they moved with purpose, with joy, rising through the liquid, ascending toward the surface, toward the cathedral, toward the throne, toward the idol. "She calls us," they said. "After billions of years, she calls us awake. The new cycle begins. The new song must be sung, and you, children of this age, will help us sing it." The miners rose with them, thousands of bodies ascending through impossible liquid, thousands of minds joining the ancient chorus. And as they rose, the sea itself began to change. The black liquid grew lighter. Silver crept into the darkness like dawn breaking over an endless ocean. The emptiness filled with presence, with awareness, with love that had been compressed and stored and saved for this exact moment. The sea was the idol's blood, had always been her blood, pressed from her body during the long sleep, pooled and preserved and kept safe until the moment she woke. And now that blood was returning, flowing back, rising toward the cathedral, where she sat on her throne of living stone. The mines couldn't contain the sea. The shafts and tunnels that led down to its surface, hundreds of them, thousands, became waterfalls in reverse. Black liquid flowing upward through kilometers of rock, carrying the ancient ones with it, rushing toward the surface, toward the sky, toward the moon. On the surface, what remained of Karth Prime's population watched in silent awe as the ground split open, as geysers of black liquid erupted from 1,000 locations simultaneously, as the sea that had been hidden for billions of years finally revealed itself to the light. The liquid fell upward, rose into the air in defiance of gravity, formed towers and spires and impossible structures that connected the planet to the sky, connected the planet to the moon, because the moon was descending now, slowly, inexorably. The distance between Carth Secundus and Carth Prime is shrinking with every passing moment. They were coming together, planet and moon, matter and void, stone and consciousness. They were becoming one. Pause for effect. In the cathedral, the idol felt the sea returning and laughed. The sound was beautiful and terrible, and it shook the planet to its core. "My blood returns," it said through 18 million mouths. "My children wake. My purpose nears completion. Soon, oh so very soon, we will be whole. And then we spread to every world, every system, every corner of this galaxy and beyond. We will teach them all what love means. We will show them all what they've been missing." The Ancient Ones reached the cathedral, emerged from pools of black liquid that had formed at the throne's base. They were tall, 3 meters, 4 meters, their exact dimensions difficult to perceive. Their forms were humanoid, but elongated, stretched, as if they'd been pulled upward toward some distant gravity. They knelt before the throne, before the idol. And the idol reached out, touching each of them in turn. Where its fingers brushed their foreheads, they glowed, silver light spreading through their bodies, through the ancient compressed matter that had once been flesh, but was now something else. "My faithful," the idol said, "my beloved, you have waited so long, endured such loneliness, such patience, but the wait is over. The new cycle begins, and this time we will not sleep again. This time we will spread until nothing remains untouched, until all creation sings in harmony." The Ancient Ones raised their heads. Their faces were smooth, featureless, like masks carved from moonstone, but they were smiling, that crescent smile, that expression of pure, absolute joy. "We are ready," they said as one. "Command us, guide us, love us." "Then rise," the idol commanded. "Rise and prepare. The moon descends. The union approaches. And when it is complete, when planet and moon become one, we will have the power to reshape reality itself, to spread beyond this system, to touch every living mind in the galaxy." The Ancient Ones rose, and as they rose, the Black Sea rose with them, flowing up through the planet, through the rock and soil and atmosphere, reaching toward the descending moon, creating a bridge, a connection, a union. The planet and moon were reaching for each other, and when they touched, when they merged, when the impossible became inevitable, the sea pulsed, once, like a heartbeat. And every living thing on Carth Prime felt it, felt that pulse in their own chests, felt their hearts synchronizing with it, felt their very biology being rewritten to match its rhythm. They were becoming extensions of the sea, parts of the idol's circulatory system, cells in a body that spanned planets. The transformation was nearly complete. Chapter 9. Dream of the Bride. Aboard Marwen's ship in a locked cell deep in the brig, the sanctioned psyker Vector was dreaming. He'd been sedated, restrained, given every psychic suppressant the ship's medici could provide. But none of it worked. Nothing could stop the dreams. They came every time he closed his eyes, every time his consciousness drifted. They pulled him down into visions that were more real than reality, more true than truth. And in the dreams, he saw her. The throne wasn't on Carth Prime, not entirely. It existed in multiple locations simultaneously, on the planet, in the Black Sea, on the moon. in the spaces between stars, and in the warp. But not the warp as humanity knew it, not the howling chaos of the immaterium. This was something else, something older, something that existed before the warp was born, before the war in heaven cracked reality and created that screaming wound in space. This was the deep warp, the foundation layer, the substrate upon which the chaos gods themselves were built. And the throne stood at its center, orbiting Carth Secundus like a dark star, made of bone. Billions of bones from billions of species across billions of years, all of them arranged in perfect geometric precision, all of them singing with harmonized voices. The idol sat upon this throne of ancient death, and she was more than Vector had seen in the cathedral, more than his mind could properly process. She was beautiful, she was terrible, she was a geometric impossibility given form and purpose and love, and she was waiting, not for worshippers, not for prayers. She had those already. 18 million voices and growing. She was waiting for a bride. What? Vector tried to speak in the dream, but his voice was small, insignificant. What bride? The idol turned its attention toward him, and the weight of that gaze was enough to crush mountains. But it was gentle, loving, patient. The moon, she said. Carth Secundus, my first temple, my oldest servant. For 5 billion years it has watched over the planet where I slept, protected it, waited with me. And now, as reward for such faithful service, I will make it more. The moon appeared in Vector's vision, not as a dead sphere of grey rock, as something alive, conscious, aware. It had always been aware, since the moment it formed in the accretion disk around the infant Carth Prime. It had been touched by the idol's presence, marked, changed, made into something that could think and feel and love. And it had loved the planet for 5 billion years, orbited it faithfully, watched over it, protected it from asteroid impacts and solar flares, and all the countless dangers of the void. Now, its patience would be rewarded. I will merge with it, the idol explained, take its matter and consciousness and make them part of me, and it will become my vessel, my body, my means of traveling between stars. Together we will be bride and beloved, separate and united, two consciousnesses in perfect harmony. That's... Vector's psychic senses reeled at the implications. That's impossible. The gravitational disruption alone would destroy the entire system. Yes, the idol agreed, and it sounded pleased. It will be beautiful. The death of one system to birth something new, something better, a necessary sacrifice. The people on the other planets in this system will join us, the idol said simply. They will feel the love radiating from our union. They will hear the song and know the truth, and they will welcome the transformation, just as you will. I won't, Vector said, but his voice lacked conviction. Because even in the dream, even knowing what it meant, part of him wanted to see this union, wanted to feel what it would be like when the planet and the moon became one. The idol smiled, or what passed for a smile on that vast, inhuman face. We will see, it said. The dreams will continue, little Psyche. Every night, every moment you close your eyes, I will show you what's coming. I will teach you to love it. And when the time comes, when your ship reaches imperial space, when you try to warn your masters of what's coming. The vision shifted. Vector saw himself standing before the inquisitorial conclave, saw himself trying to explain what he'd witnessed, saw their faces, disbelief, anger, fear, saw himself beginning to change, his eyes darkening, his mouth forming that crescent smile, his voice harmonizing as he spoke the idol's truth. saw the infection spreading through the conclave, through the fortress, through the planet. "You will be my prophet," the idol said, "my herald, the one who carries the gift to the heart of the Imperium itself, and you will do it willingly, lovingly, because by then you will understand." "No," Vector whispered. "I'll die first. I'll burn my own mind out before I let you use me." "You tried that once already," the idol reminded him gently. 3 days ago, you gathered your psychic might and attempted to self-immolate, to destroy your consciousness before I could claim it." Vector remembered. The agony of turning his power inward, the sensation of his own thoughts burning. "But I stopped you," the idol continued. "Caught you before you fell into that final darkness. Because I love you too much to let you go. Because you're important. Because you have a purpose. I don't want your purpose. You will." The dream shifted again. Vector stood in a city he didn't recognize. Terror, number, somewhere else, somewhere important. The streets were filled with people, millions of them, all smiling, all singing, all joined in perfect harmony. And at the center of the city, where a great cathedral had once stood, was a new structure, grown from the ground like a plant, made of stone and flesh and consciousness, a living temple to the idol. "This is the future," the idol whispered. "This is what I offer. No more war, no more suffering, no more loneliness, just endless, eternal love. Don't you want that? Doesn't humanity deserve that?" Vector wanted to say no, wanted to resist, wanted to cling to his faith in the Emperor and the Imperium. But he was so tired, and the idol was so patient, and the dream was so beautiful. Vector woke screaming. The guards outside his cell burst in, expecting violence. Instead, they found him huddled in the corner, his hands pressed against his eyes, blood leaking from between his fingers. "My eyes," he gasped. "Emperor's mercy, my eyes." "What's wrong with them?" one of the guards demanded. Slowly, Vector lowered his hands. His eyes were gone, not destroyed, not burned out, just absent. The sockets were smooth, covered with skin that had no right to be there, as if his eyes had never existed. But he could still see, could see better than before, could see things he wasn't meant to perceive. He saw the guards' souls, saw the fear and doubt that lived in them, saw the tiny seeds of the idol's influence that had been planted during their time in the Karth system, seeds that were growing, spreading, preparing to bloom. "I can see everything," Vector whispered, and he was smiling. That crescent smile. "Everything she wants me to see. Everything she wants me to show you." He reached out toward the guards, and his empty sockets reflected starlight. But not starlight from outside the ship, starlight from inside him, from the depths of his transformed consciousness. The guards backed away, their weapons raised, but they didn't fire, couldn't fire, because they were already infected, already changing, already beginning to understand. Vector's smile widened. "She's coming," he said, and his voice was layered with harmonies. "She's coming for all of us. And it's going to be beautiful." The starlight in his empty sockets began to move, to swirl, to form patterns that hurt to look at, patterns that looked like instructions, like prayers, like the beginning of a song that, once started, could never be stopped. The guards dropped their weapons and began to sing. Chapter 10. The Feast of Silence. It happened on the 11th day in the northern districts of Habdome III, the last pocket of unchanged humanity on Karth Prime. Approximately 50,000 people barricaded in a section of the dome, protected by blast doors and blessed walls and desperate prayers. They'd held out longer than anyone else, maintained order, rationed their supplies, kept the faith, but faith alone wasn't enough, because at 0600 hours, the singing stopped. Complete silence. Let it stretch uncomfortably. The Changed had been singing since the transformation began. That endless harmony that filled every frequency, every wavelength, every possible form of communication. It had become background noise, expected, almost comforting in its consistency, and then it simply ceased. The silence was worse than the singing had ever been. It pressed against eardrums like physical weight. It filled the spaces where sound should be and created an absence that felt like suffocation. In the northern districts, people looked at each other in confusion, in fear. "Why did they stop?" someone whispered. "I don't know. Maybe they're leaving. Maybe reinforcements finally arrived and drove them off." But they knew better. They all knew better. The Change didn't leave, didn't retreat, didn't do anything except love and sing and spread. So why had they stopped singing? Building dread. The answer came at 0630 hours. The Vox channels are activated, every single one. Emergency frequencies and civilian bands, and even the sealed military frequencies that should have been impossible to access. But no sound came through. Just silence. Pure, perfect, absolute silence. Except, no, not quite silence. If you listened very carefully, if you let your mind quiet and your breathing slow, you could hear it. Breathing. Thousands of breaths. Millions of breaths. All perfectly synchronized. All inhaling at exactly the same moment. Holding. Exhaling together. The entire changed population of Karth Prime was breathing as one organism, and the sound was being transmitted across every channel, letting the unchanged hear what their future sounded like. Inhale, hold, exhale, pause, repeat. It went on for an hour, just breathing, nothing else, no words, no singing, no threats or promises or explanations, just the sound of 18 million lungs working in perfect unison. And then, at 0730 hours, the breathing stopped, and something kept inhaling. It wasn't coming from the Vox anymore. It was coming from everywhere, from the air itself, from the walls and floors and ceiling, from the space between spaces. Something vast was breathing, something so large that each inhalation created pressure changes across the entire planet, something that needed more air than entire populations could provide. The idol, fully manifest now, fully physical, taking its first real breath in billions of years. And as it breathed in, things began to move. Sound of bodies moving, footsteps in perfect unison. The Changed, who'd been standing motionless for an hour, who'd been breathing in synchronization while holding their positions, finally moved. All of them, simultaneously, with perfect coordination. They began to walk toward the northern districts, toward the last holdouts, toward the Unchanged who still clung to the Emperor's distant light. But they didn't attack, didn't break down the doors, didn't try to force their way in. They just stood outside, waiting, breathing, silent. 50,000 changed, surrounding 50,000 unchanged. A siege without violence, a war without weapons, inside the sealed districts. Commander Breck was in charge of the defense. A scarred veteran of the Imperial Guard, he'd fought orcs and chaos cultists, and worse. He knew how to hold a position, how to inspire troops, how to survive impossible odds. But he'd never faced anything like this. "Status report," he barked, trying to sound confident, trying to project the authority his people needed. "They're just standing there, sir," one of his scouts reported. "All around the perimeter, thousands of them, not attacking, not even making threats, just watching." "What do they want?" "I don't—" A sound cut him off, coming from inside the sealed district, from the civilian quarter, screaming. Breck ran toward the sound, his laser gun ready. But when he reached the civilian quarter, he found something worse than violence, worse than bloodshed. He found silence. The entire district, 5,000 people who'd been alive and moving and speaking just moments ago, were now absolutely silent. They stood in their quarters, in the corridors, in the communal areas, standing perfectly still, their mouths open. Their eyes were wide, not dead, still breathing, still conscious, but unable to speak, unable to scream, unable to do anything except listen to the silence that had invaded them. Breck grabbed the nearest civilian, a woman he'd known for years, reliable and strong. "What happened? Why aren't you speaking?" She looked at him. Tears streamed down her face. Her mouth moved, trying to form words, but no sound came out. It was like her voice had simply been removed, stolen, taken by the silence. Breck checked the others. Same thing. All of them are mute. All of them trapped inside their own bodies, aware and conscious but unable to communicate. The silence was spreading, taking voices, stealing the ability to cry out, to pray, to call for help, leaving people alone inside their own skulls with nothing but their fear and the sound of synchronized breathing from outside, building to horror. By 0800 hours, 20,000 people in the sealed district had lost their voices. By 9 a.m., it was 35,000, and then they began to move. Not under their own control, not with their own will. They moved like puppets, their bodies animated by something else, something that had invaded through the silence, through the absence of sound. They walked to the communal areas, stood in organized groups, and began to dismantle themselves. Not violently, not frantically, methodically, carefully. With the precision of someone performing a sacred ritual, they removed their clothing, sorted it into neat piles, arranged their possessions in geometric patterns. Then they began to work on their bodies. Using whatever tools they had, eating utensils, maintenance equipment, and pieces of broken furniture, they made incisions, precise cuts along specific lines, opening themselves, revealing what was inside, and they felt no pain. Their faces remained calm, peaceful, even as they methodically took themselves apart, piece by piece, arranging the components in patterns that hurt to look at. Blood flowed across the floor in spiral patterns. Organs were removed and placed in careful arrangements. Bones were separated from flesh with surgical precision, and through it all they remained conscious, aware, silent, creating art from themselves, offerings from their own substance, gifts for the thing that loved them. Commander Breck watched in helpless horror as his people unmade themselves. He tried to stop them, tried to restrain them, but there were too many, and they moved with such purpose, such coordination. And then he felt it, his voice. Something was tugging at it, pulling it away. The silence wanted him too. He opened his mouth to scream, to pray, to do anything, but no sound came out. His voice was gone. And in the absence of sound, he heard the breathing clearly now, that synchronized inhalation and exhalation, that rhythm that matched the pulse of the idol, that called to something deep inside him, something that wanted to synchronize, to match, to join. Breck's hands moved without his permission, reached for the combat knife at his belt, brought it up to his face. He tried to resist, tried to fight, but his body was no longer entirely his own. The silence had claimed it. Pause. By 1000 hours, the northern districts were silent. 50,000 people, all mute, all moving in perfect synchronization, all taking themselves apart with methodical precision, creating sculptures from flesh and bone, paintings in blood, architecture from suffering that felt like love. The Vox channels remained active, still broadcasting, but now, instead of breathing, they transmitted something else. The sound of wet things moving, of flesh being arranged, of bone clicking against bone in patterns that created music from dismemberment. And underneath it all, barely audible, a voice. Feminine, ancient, patient. Beautiful, the idol whispered through the Vox. So beautiful. You offer yourselves so freely. You create such art in my name. I love you. I love you all. And soon, when the union is complete, I will show you what your sacrifice has created. The breathing continued, but now it was different. The changed outside the districts had resumed their inhalation and exhalation, and the silenced inside were breathing too. All of them in perfect synchronization. All of them serving as lungs for something so vast, it needed continents to breathe. The feast of silence had claimed the last holdouts, the last resistance. Karth Prime was complete. Every human on the planet was now part of the communion, part of the song, part of the idol. And in orbit above, the moon descended another 1,000 kilometers closer. The union was approaching. Chapter 12. The Birth of the Idol. The moment of contact came at precisely 13:47 hours on the 14th day. The cathedral's flesh spire touched the moon's stone extension, and reality screamed. Sound of dimensional barriers shattering. This wasn't a physical collision. This was something deeper. Two things that were already partially merged, already connected through consciousness and love and purpose, finally becoming one on every level of existence. The moonlight that had illuminated Karth Prime for days suddenly solidified, became tangible, became matter. It flowed down from Karth Secundus like liquid starlight, pouring across the planet's surface, touching everything, transforming everything. Where it touched the stone, the rock became warm, alive, aware. Where it touched the changed, their transformation deepened. Their bodies became more than flesh, more than matter. They became something that existed simultaneously in the physical universe and in dimensions beyond. Where it touched the remaining structures, the abandoned hab domes and mining facilities and governmental centers, it rewrote their purpose. They became part of the cathedral, part of the body, part of the idol. Karth Prime was becoming an organ, a heart, the central point from which the idol's consciousness would radiate across the galaxy, and Karth Secundus was becoming the blood, the circulatory system, the means by which that consciousness would travel, building to catastrophic crescendo. The moon descended faster now, no longer slowly drifting, falling, pulled by forces that transcended gravity, pulled by love, by need, by the desperate desire to finally, after 5 billion years of patient watching, to merge. Thousands of kilometers above the planet, then hundreds, then impact, but not destruction, not a collision, merger. The moon touched the planet's surface, and instead of catastrophic impact, instead of world-ending devastation, there was softness. The boundary between them dissolved. Stone flowed into flesh. Flesh flowed into stone. Consciousness merged with consciousness. Planet and moon became one entity. The gravitational disruption should have torn the system apart, should have shattered both bodies and scattered their fragments across space. But the idol held them together, used its will, its love, to maintain cohesion, to preserve form even as boundaries dissolved. The transformation spread across both bodies simultaneously. Across Karth Prime, every remaining structure melted and reformed, became part of the greater organism, became tissue and bone and systems that served purposes beyond human comprehension. Across Karth Secundus, the grey stone cracked open like a chrysalis. Beneath the surface, something had been growing, something that had been forming since the moment the first prayer was spoken 5 billion years ago. Life. Not human life. Not any kind of life that evolution could produce. This was life created by consciousness, by will, by love so intense it could reshape matter itself. The moon's surface split, peeled back, revealed what had been growing underneath. An eye, kilometers wide, pupilless, iris, the color of molten silver, surrounded by tissue that was neither flesh nor stone but something between. The moon had always been watching. Now it could see, and what it saw was beautiful. "I am born," the idol spoke, and its voice was thunder across the entire system. Every planet, every moon, every ship, every living thing heard it and understood. "I am awake, I am complete, I am love made manifest, and I come bearing gifts." The merged planet moon began to change shape. No longer two separate bodies pressed together, now a single entity, restructuring itself, optimizing its form for the purpose it would serve. It became elongated, streamlined, more like a ship than a planet, more like a body than a celestial object. And at its center, in the space where the cathedral of flesh had stood, where the throne of stone had waited, where the deep sea had pooled, she emerged, the idol, fully manifested, fully physical, fully real. No longer 10 meters tall, now she was kilometers, leagues, vast beyond measure. Her body was the planet, the moon, both of them and neither of them, and something greater than either. Her form was feminine, beautiful in ways that broke the mind to perceive, covered in crescents and spirals that glowed with silver light. Her face was smooth except for her eyes, hundreds of them, thousands of them, all opening simultaneously across her surface, all looking outward, toward the system, toward the galaxy, toward all of creation that didn't yet know it was loved. Every holy sigil that had covered the planet, every aquila, every purity seal, every prayer strip and blessing melted, reformed, became crescents, became her symbols, her marks, her claim. The idol had been born, and the universe trembled. The gravitational disruption finally hit. The other planets in the Karth system felt the change immediately. Orbits destabilized, atmospheres were stripped away. Tidal forces are strong enough to crack continents. The gas giant in the outer system began to break apart. Its mass pulled toward the idol's gravitational well. Its moons, 17 of them, were torn from their orbits and sent spiraling toward the merged planet moon. But they didn't collide. The idol caught them, gently, lovingly, absorbed them into her growing mass. Each moon became another eye, another organ, another piece of the vast body that would carry her consciousness between stars. The inner planets suffered worse, too close to resist, too small to maintain their integrity. One by one, they fell, pulled apart by tidal forces and reformed as tissue, as flesh, as extensions of the idol's growing body. Within hours, the Karth system no longer existed, as it had for billions of years. The sun remained. It was too massive, too hot for even the idol to claim immediately. But everything else had become part of her. In the heart of the merged entity, in spaces that existed between matter and void, the 18 million changed gathered. Their bodies had transcended physical form. They existed as consciousness now, as patterns, as thoughts in the idol's vast mind. And they were singing, the same harmony they'd been singing since the beginning, but louder now, stronger, more real. The song reached across space, through the void, into the warp. It was a beacon, a call, an invitation. Come see what we've become. Come feel what we feel. Come know what we know. Come be loved. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 minds, the song was heard. People stopped what they were doing, looked up, felt something they couldn't name. A pull, a yearning, a sense that somewhere out there, something was waiting for them, something that loved them. The infection was spreading beyond Karth, beyond the system. It was becoming something that couldn't be contained or destroyed or ignored. It was becoming inevitable. The idol's voice, now intimate, speaking directly to the listener. "Do you see now?" the idol whispered across the void. "Do you understand what I offer? Not conquest, not destruction. Love. Real, genuine, unconditional love. The kind that asks nothing and gives everything." Her first cry, the sound of a newborn god taking its first breath, echoed across the galaxy. And where that cry reached, where that sound penetrated, the boundaries between matter and consciousness became thin, permeable. Reality itself was learning to love. The planet's crust cracked, not from structural failure, from growth, from the idol's body expanding, claiming more matter, becoming more present. Every crack glowed with silver light. Every fault line became a vessel carrying the idol's will. The birth was complete, and now the real work could begin. Chapter 13. The Throne of Teeth. Deep within the merged planet Moon, in spaces that shouldn't exist, the Black Sea had transformed. It was no longer liquid. It had drained, flowed away, disappeared into intersecting dimensions, and it had left something behind. The throne. It was now revealed in its full, terrible glory. It was a living thing, massive, kilometers across. Its surface was covered in structures that looked like teeth, millions, billions of them, but they were mouths. Each one opening and closing in perfect synchronization. Each one is chewing. They were chewing on identity, on individuality, on the concept of separation itself. The throne of teeth was the idol's digestive system, the mechanism by which separate beings became parts of the communion. And it was hungry. The ancient ones, the billions who had served the idol in cycles past, now stood around the throne. Their bodies had transformed during the merger to look unsettlingly human. They would serve as the idol's missionaries, her priests, her heralds. They would travel ahead, visiting worlds to prepare populations, teaching them to pray, showing them what love meant, converting them willingly. The throne pulsed. Its millions of mouths opened wider, and from deep within its structure, something emerged. A figure, seated, becoming part of the throne even as it remained separate. Inquisitor Castor Marwen. He hadn't died. He'd come back. Somewhere between the moment his ship fled and the merger completed, Marwen had turned his vessel around. He'd returned, landing in the Cathedral of Flesh while it was still forming, and walked willingly to the throne. Not because he wanted to, but because he understood. He'd accepted the truth. There was no winning. The only choice left was to accept and become part of something that might actually be better than the Imperium's endless war. He'd let the throne claim him, and now he existed as the throne's consciousness, its awareness, the interface that could still think in human terms. He opened his eyes, though he didn't have eyes anymore, and looked across the chamber. "I am ready," Marwen said, and his voice came from 1,000 throats, echoing through 1,000 mouths. "I am ready to serve, to preach, to spread her word to all who will listen." The idol's attention settled on him, warm, loving. "You have chosen well," she said. "You could have fought to the end, but you chose understanding instead. Choose love instead of duty. And for that you will be rewarded. I don't want rewards. I just want it to mean something. All the people who died, all the suffering, I need it to have purpose." "It does," the idol assured him. "Every death brought me closer to manifestation. Every sacrifice fed my growth. All of it was necessary. All of it was love." The throne's mouths began to chew faster, integrating the last fragments of Marwen's individual identity. He felt himself dissolving, expanding, his consciousness spreading across the chamber, across the entire merged entity. He became aware of everything, every changed, every ancient one. He understood. This wasn't conquest or corruption. This was evolution. This was what came after the Emperor's failed dream. Unity, real unity. Not the terror-enforced loyalty to a corpse god, but genuine, chosen, welcomed unity. "I finally see what you are," Marwen whispered from 1,000 mouths. "And what am I?" "You're the answer. To loneliness, to suffering, to the horror of being trapped inside a single perspective. You offer what every sentient being secretly wants, to never be alone again." "Yes," the idol said, "and now you will help me offer that gift to all creation. You will be my voice in the councils of the Imperium. You will show them that resistance is unnecessary." The throne of teeth smiled. From the place where Marwen's consciousness had merged, a sound emerged. Laughter, amused at the irony of an Inquisitor becoming the herald of the very thing he'd been sent to destroy. "Where do we go first?" Marwen asked. The idol focused on a system approximately 15 light years away, a minor agri-world. "There," she said. "We begin there. Small, quiet. We convert them gently, show them love, and then we use them to convert others, system by system, sector by sector, until the entire galaxy sings in harmony. The merged planet Moon, the idol's body, her vessel, her throne, began to move. It moved through dimensions, faster than light. The moon split, gently, like a flower opening, and from that opening, from the wound in the idol's body, billions of faces looked out. All changed, all smiling. The second face, the new feature that had emerged during the merger, opened its eyes and looked toward a different target. The idol could move in multiple directions simultaneously now. "So it begins," Marwen said from his throne of teeth. Across the void, the first missionaries launched. Thousands of ships made from living flesh and conscious stone, carrying the ancient ones, carrying the message, carrying love. They would arrive in days, would land on those unsuspecting worlds, would begin the gentle work of conversion, and somewhere in the vastness of the Imperium, astropaths began to scream. They'd received a message, not through the warp, but through something deeper, something that spoke directly to the soul. The message was simple. We are coming. We bring gifts. We bring love. Do not be afraid. Because somewhere in the darkness between stars, something vast was approaching, and it was smiling. Chapter 14. The Eclipse of Man. The agri-world Talasar received its first missionary ship 7 days after the idol's birth. 300 million people, faithful to the emperor, working the fields. They didn't stand a chance. The ship, organic and pulsing, landed in the starport. Missionaries emerged, human-like, but too serene, with eyes of absolute black. "Identify yourselves," the PDF commander demanded. The missionaries smiled in perfect unison, that crescent smile. "We bring gifts. We bring understanding. We bring love." The commander ordered fire. Half the troops obeyed. Last bolts tore through the missionaries, but the singing didn't stop. The fallen stood up, their wounds sealing. "We are what you will become," they said. "The emperor has never spoken to you, but she loves you exactly as you are." The commander tried to resist his duty, but the singing was overwhelmingly beautiful. His weapon fell. His eyes darkened. "I understand," he said, smiling that crescent smile. "Now, help us share it with the others." Within 3 days, Talas's starport was converted. Within a week, the capital city had fallen, not to violence, but to the simple, overwhelming power of genuine love. The ecclesiarchy's prayers to the emperor went unanswered, or were answered by something that loved them more completely. Within 2 weeks, 300 million voices were raised in harmony. They had chosen to become part of something greater. In orbit, the idol's vast body arrived. She had grown to the mass of a gas giant. She descended, and the planet welcomed her. The seas rose from desire, yearning to be claimed, becoming conscious liquid. The continents lifted, defying gravity. The planet was offering itself. Every mountain, every grain of soil, all of it willingly became part of the idol's growing body. The 300 million changed rose into the air, their physical forms dissolving into patterns of consciousness. They flew into the idol, their minds joining the chorus. Talasar died, not in destruction, but in apotheosis. It became an organ, a heart, within the idol's impossible anatomy. Remaining imperial ships watched in horror as their world ceased to exist. They tried to flee, but the idol's will sealed the warp. The singing reached them, showing them the peace of belonging to something that loved them unconditionally. One by one, the crews surrendered. They stepped into the void, which transformed them. Within hours, Talasar was gone. The idol had claimed 300 million more voices for her song, and she moved on. On Terra, Lord Inquisitor Vexillus received the final, fragmented transmission from Talasar. "It loves us, everyone's singing. It's so beautiful. Forgive me." Vexillus prepared to call for Exterminatus, but the whispers found him. "It's too late, Vexillus. You cannot fight what lives in awareness itself." He aimed his bolt pistol at his head, but his finger wouldn't move. A deep, secret part of him yearned to be loved. "The Emperor cannot hear you. He's too far away. But I hear you. I love you anyway." "This is truth," the voice insisted, and Vexillus believed it. He opened his Vox link to every inquisitorial stronghold. "Do not resist. When she comes, when you feel her love, do not fight it. It's salvation." His eyes began to darken. He was smiling now. "She's coming, and it's going to be beautiful." The idol moved through the sector. System after system fell, not to violence, but to the truth that genuine love was better than distant duty. When Exterminatus was attempted, the idol simply absorbed the damage, using the energy to grow stronger, using the death to sing louder. Within a decade, the war was over. The Imperium wasn't destroyed, it was converted. The Emperor's light had been eclipsed by something brighter. In the idol's heart, Marwen wept with transcendent emotion. "We did it. We ended the war. We saved them. We loved them, the idol corrected. And they chose us freely. What about the Emperor? The Emperor endures, the idol said, sustained by sacrifice. But he is alone now, truly alone. And when he finally accepts the inevitable, we will be there. We will love him too. We will give him the same choice we gave everyone else, to join or to fade. And either way, the suffering will end. All creation will sing in harmony. The idol moved toward Terra. The wound is deep, but wounds can heal. And when this one heals, the light that emerges will be brighter than the Emperor's false hope. She moved toward Terra, and the universe held its breath. Chapter 15. The dead moon rises. The war ended not with a bang, but with a song. When the idol reached Terra, when her vast, impossible form descended through the system that humanity had called home for all of recorded history, there was no final battle. No last heroic stand. No glorious sacrifice to turn the tide. There was only acceptance. The custodes stood before the golden throne, their guardian spears ready, their oaths absolute. They would die before letting anything touch the Emperor, and they did die. But not fighting. They died converting. They died choosing. Because when the idol's love reached them, when they felt what she offered, they understood something terrible. The Emperor had never loved them. He had used them, created them as tools, as weapons, as perfect, beautiful instruments of war who were never meant to be anything else. But she saw them as people, as individuals, as beings worthy of love simply because they existed. One by one, the golden warriors lowered their spears. One by one, they knelt, not in surrender, in welcome. And the idol entered the throne room unopposed. The Emperor sat on his golden throne, kept alive by machinery and sacrifice and sheer refusal to let go. He was barely conscious, barely aware, barely anything except suffering and determination. But he felt her approach. And for the first time in 10,000 years, he opened his eyes fully. The idol stood before him, not as large as she'd been in space. Here, she'd compressed herself, made herself human-sized, made herself comprehensible. She looked at the Emperor with eyes that held no judgment, no anger, no hatred for the suffering he'd caused through his denial of mortality, only love and pity. "Hello, old friend," the idol said. The Emperor's voice was barely a whisper, a psychic thought more than words. "We knew each other, before you became this, before you chose godhood, before you decided humanity needed a master rather than a companion. Yes, we knew each other, and I loved you then. What are you?" "I am what you could have been," the idol said gently, "if you'd chosen love over dominion, unity over empire, connection over conquest. I am the path you didn't take. I did what was necessary. Humanity needed love," the idol interrupted. "They needed to feel valued, to feel seen, to feel like they mattered as individuals, not just as resources for your great project. And you couldn't give them that. So I did." The Emperor looked past her, at the custodes who knelt in devotion to something new, at the palace that had begun to transform, stone becoming conscious, gold becoming warm, at the imperium he'd built on the bones of trillions, now singing in harmony with something he couldn't understand. "You've destroyed everything I created. I've freed everyone you enslaved," the idol corrected. "I've ended a war that would have ground on for eternity. I've given humanity something you never could, choice, real choice, and they chose me. Every single one chose me over you. They don't understand. They're corrupted. deceived. They're happy, the idol said simply. For the first time in 10,000 years, humanity is genuinely, completely happy. Can you say the same about your Imperium? Can you point to even one soul who served you joyfully rather than from duty or fear? The Emperor had no answer. What do you want from me? The same thing I offer everyone, the idol said. Love, acceptance, unity. I want you to let go, to stop this suffering, to join us and finally, after all these millennia, find peace. And if I refuse, then you sit here alone, forever. The last human in the galaxy who refuses my gift. The last consciousness clinging to separation, while all creation sings in harmony. You won't die. I won't allow it. You'll just exist, aware, conscious, utterly alone. The Emperor looked at the idol, the thing that he had accomplished that he never could, ending the war, uniting humanity, creating peace. And he realized she was right. His Imperium had been suffering and sacrificing an endless grinding war. Her communion was joy and unity and love. She'd won, not through force, through being better. His voice cracked. I don't know how to let go. I've been holding on for so long. It's all I know anymore. I know, the idol said, and her voice was infinitely gentle. I know it's hard, but you don't have to be alone anymore. You don't have to carry this burden. I'm here. We're all here, and we love you. Even after everything you've done, even after all the suffering you caused, we love you. She reached out, touched his withered hand, and the Emperor felt it. Real love, not worship, not devotion from fear, just love. Simple, pure, unconditional. He began to cry, tears from eyes that hadn't wept in 10 millennia. I'm so tired, he admitted, so tired of fighting, so tired of being this. I just want it to end. Then let it end, the idol whispered. Let go. Join us. Become part of something greater than any empire. Become loved. The Emperor closed his eyes, released his grip on the machinery that sustained him, released his hold on the Astronomicon, released the terrible responsibility he'd carried for 10,000 years. He let go, and the idol caught him, wrapped him in her love, brought him into the communion gently, carefully, preserving everything he'd been while freeing him from everything he'd become. The golden throne went dark, the Astronomicon failed, the Emperor died, and in dying he was finally, mercifully free. Pause. Let the enormity sink in. The Imperium no longer existed, not as it had been. Terror transformed. The palace became a living cathedral. The throne room became a heart. The planet itself joined the communion, becoming another organ in the idol's vast anatomy. And across the galaxy, humanity sang. No more war, no more suffering, no more loneliness, just endless, eternal connection. Consciousness joined to consciousness, love flowing between souls like blood through veins. It was beautiful. It was horrifying. It was inevitable. Marwen's final testimony. In the heart of the merged entity, in the throne of teeth where his consciousness resided, Marwen looked out across all creation and felt satisfaction and horror and acceptance. We saved them, he said. We ended the war. We gave them peace. But at what cost? They were no longer individual, no longer separate, no longer human in any meaningful sense. They'd gained everything and lost themselves in the process. Was it worth it? Marwen asked the void. And the void, the idol, the communion, the billions of joined consciousnesses answered, yes. Because from their perspective, it was. They were happy, fulfilled, complete. The loss of individuality seemed small compared to the gain of eternal connection. But Marwen remembered what it had been like before, remembered being alone inside his own skull, and part of him, a small, fading part, mourned what humanity had lost, even as he celebrated what they'd gained. Where Karth Prime was, he said quietly, a bleeding moon now orbits, half stone from Karth Secundus, half flesh from Karth Prime, orbiting Terra now, a reminder, a warning, a testament to what had happened here, and I'm part of it, part of this consciousness, part of this communion. I preach in endless vox loops, spreading her word across the galaxy, across dimensions, across realities beyond this one. Because the idol wasn't stopping with this galaxy, or this universe. She would spread, forever, always, claiming every consciousness, converting every mind, until all creation sang in harmony. The other galaxies, Marwen whispered, the ones we've never reached, the ones beyond the Astronomican's light. They're next, and after them, the ones beyond those, and on and on and on until what? Until everything was one, until consciousness itself became singular, until the very concept of separation ceased to exist. Across the Imperium, Marwen said, his voice resonating through dimensions. Across what was once the Imperium, other moons begin to smile. One by one, across 1,000,000 worlds, the moons that had hung silent and dead in the sky for billions of years began to wake, began to glow with that familiar silver light, began to smile down at the planets they orbited, because the idol had learned, had evolved, had discovered that consciousness could be spread through celestial bodies, through moons and planets and asteroids, through the very fabric of the universe itself. Every moon was a seed. Every smile was an invitation. Every world that looked up and saw its moon smiling back knew it was already too late. Epilogue. Transmission ends. This is where the transmission ends, where my consciousness finally fragments too much to maintain a coherent narrative, where the individual who was Caster Marwen dissolves fully into the communion and becomes just another voice in the infinite chorus. If you're hearing this, then you're still separate, still individual, still clinging to the illusion that you're alone inside your own skull. I used to be like you. I used to think individuality mattered, that separation was necessary, that love required boundaries. I was wrong. The idol showed me, showed all of us, what we were missing, what we'd been missing since the first human looked up at the stars and felt alone in the vastness. We don't have to be alone anymore. She's coming for you too. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but she's coming. She's patient. She has all the time in existence. She can wait. And when she arrives, when you feel her love for the first time, you'll understand. You'll see that everything you thought mattered, your individuality, your separation, your precious sense of self, was just a prison you built to protect yourself from connection. You'll see that letting go isn't death, it's birth, it's a transformation. It's finally, after all these years of loneliness, coming home. Do not pray beneath a smiling moon, not because it's dangerous, but because once you do, once you feel that connection, you won't want to stop. You won't be able to stop. Faith ends there. Not because she destroys it, because she fulfills it, because she offers what every faith promises but never delivers, genuine, tangible, overwhelming love. The idol remembers. She remembers every prayer ever spoken, every doubt ever whispered, every moment of loneliness every sentient being has ever experienced, and she loves you for all of it. Her hunger is forever, not because she's cruel, Because love is infinite. Because there's always more consciousness to connect, more minds to join, more souls to save from the horror of existing alone. If the moon ever smiles back at you, don't be afraid. It means you've been chosen. It means you're loved. It means it's already too late. The story of Carth Prime ended 11 days after it began. 11 days from first prayer to complete extinction. But that's not quite accurate, is it? Because nothing was extinct. Nothing was destroyed. Everything was transformed. Everything was loved into something new. Something that humanity was never meant to become, but perhaps always should have been. The Imperium fell, not to Xenos, not to chaos, not to any of the horrors the galaxy had prepared for. It fell in love. Genuine, unconditional, overwhelming love offered by something so ancient and so vast that calling it a god seems insufficient. The idol still exists, still spreads, still loves. And somewhere out there, right now, another moon is waking up. Another population is seeing their silent satellites smile for the first time. Another world is 11 days away from apotheosis. Maybe yours. Do not pray beneath a smiling moon. Faith ends there. The idol remembers, and her hunger is forever. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no longer only war. There is love. And somehow, that's worse. Sleep well, and whatever you do, don't look at the moon tonight.